of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening. Now live from the heart of liberal Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning, welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Best friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Now here are your hosts, Dom and Crute.
Welcome to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, a tremendously huge Thursday. Fancy Brian, it's bigger than you and I put together, buddy.
I'm feeling the gravitational pull.
It is going to be a tremendous show. We got great guests. I've got former U.S. Attorney James Santelle joining us at 2:30 today. And we've got a fine comedian, Sharron Paul. I know her because she first came to Madison with Liz Winstead and the sexy, I guess they called the Lady Parts Comedy Tour at that time. Sharron was part of the big show and a lot of fun. And we partied with her at the RNC in Cleveland. And she joined us on the air then. And she's going to join us on the air. She's going to be my co-devil in the 4 o'clock happy hour. So I'm excited. She's gone through a multitude of life changes since then.
Yeah, and I'm a really big fan of Liz Winstead, and I'm a fan of Sharron. I'm really excited to have her on.
As am I. Like I said, a huge show, a tremendous show. And, I think I need to rewrite the headline of the day. It's over here at the CNN. I'm gonna take their take on it first. And something of a vanilla headline, but still some grab here, still a little click worthy. Here's how CNN's Caitlin Polance and Zachary Cohen, or at least whoever wrote the headline for them, had to say. Senate Judiciary Committee issues sweeping report detailing how Trump and a top DOJ lawyer attempted to overturn the 2020 election. Well, I could punch it up a little bit. Here's a suggested headline. Don't they call that a coup d'etat?
I'm told in certain places they do call it that.
And maybe one more suggestion. Where the frick are the indictments, Merrick Garland? Why? I mean, this was the DOJ. The lawyers, the Department of Justice were the ones being pressured by the former president. The magic number of the day, Fancy Brian, and you know it, and the count knows it. The magic
number of the day is 9.
9 times, 9 specific times, 9 freaking times, the president of the United States pressured the Department of Justice to overturn the election for his benefit. 9 times. That's a lot of times.
That's a lot of times. That's about as many as, the Mueller report involved, like many different times of different instances and stuff. But 9 times in a how many month span? How
it was
how
like
short
over
of
a matter of a couple of weeks.
Just a couple of weeks. 9. Hey, but what about now?
Well,
what about now?
Let me get the reporting accurately. Let me go to the CNN piece. And we've got a fine U.S. attorney to help us digest it at 2:30. James Santelle, a crowd favorite. So stick around for Jim. From the body of the piece, Trump directly asked the Justice Department 9 freaking times to undermine the election result. And his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, broke administration policy by pressuring a Justice Department lawyer to investigate claims of election fraud, according to the report, which is based on witness interviews of top former Justice Department officials. The top lawyers in the nation. The Democratic-led committee also revealed the White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, threatened to quit in early January as Trump considered replacing then acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen with Jeffrey Clark, a DOJ lawyer. We've talked about him often on this show, who supported election fraud conspiracies. Clark was a conspiracy theorist, and he was Trump's choice. And he even threatened the guy, basically threatened Rosen, said, if you'll only do the right thing, then I won't have to replace you with me.
Wow.
Barely even a veiled threat. Let me read on. After the 8-month investigation, the findings highlight the relentlessness of Trump and some of his top advisors as they fixated on using the Justice Department to prop up false conspiracies of election fraud. The committee report, the most comprehensive account so far of Trump's efforts to overturn the election, described his conduct as an abuse of presidential power. That didn't even seem strong enough to me. More from the reporting at CNN. Soon after the release of the report Thursday morning, Republican Senator Chuck Grassley's office issued a GOP version, which pushes back on the Democrats' finding and defends Trump, saying he listened to his senior advisors and followed their advice and recommendations. Is that what he was doing? Mark Meadows was the puppet master moving Trump here, Grassley. Here's more. Appearing on CNN's New Day Thursday morning, Senate Judiciary Chairman Dick Durbin, an Illinois Democrat, said the U.S. was half a step away from a constitutional crisis, a full-blown constitutional crisis, and explained the events unfolded in 3 phases. First phase, Trump goes to court, loses every lawsuit, which claims there was voter fraud in the election. Next, he decides he has to take over the Department of Justice and the Attorney General and have the Attorney General push this narrative onto the states and tell them to stop from sending in their electoral college vote totals. When that failed, and our report goes into graphic detail of the efforts that were made, the third step was to turn the mob loose on the Capitol the day we were counting the ballots, Durbin said, referring to the January 6th riot. Now, the DOJ lawyer was a crucial player, the Democrats say. The 400-page report by Senate Democrats entitled Subverting Justice slams the actions of Clark, who they say became a crucial player in Trump's attempt to use the Justice Department for his political gain. Yeah, we call that a coup d'etat. The Senate Judiciary Committee announced on Thursday they were referring him to the D.C. bar for a review of his professional conduct, citing rules that bar attorneys from assisting in fraud and interfering with the administration of justice. Let's refer him to the DOJ. Let's skip a step. The committee said it has not yet made findings of possible criminality since their investigation is not complete. Clark has not been charged with any crime yet. And an attorney for Clark didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. Clark was not interviewed by the committee. Instead, top Justice Department officials described in interviews his and Trump's plan to overturn the election. Clark had pushed Rosen and Richard Donahue, then the second in command at the Justice Department, to use the Justice Department to announce election fraud investigations and ask state leaders in Georgia to appoint electors, potentially disregarding the certified popular vote. Clark began by making the pitch in late December, talking about time frames. It was a very short time frame, Fancy Brian. Started making his pitch in late December after speaking with Trump directly, the committee found. The Senate committee wrote he may have had assistance from lower-level allies within the Justice Department and even attempted to bargain with Rosen on his plan, saying he would turn down a chance to take Rosen's place, to take his job, if Rosen would only agree to support his Georgia elector initiative. Clark's proposal to weld DOJ power to override the already certified popular vote reflected a stunning distortion of DOJ's authority. DOJ protects ballot access and ballot integrity, but has no role in determining which candidates won a particular election, the committee wrote. Donahue and Rosen both testified to the committee. So, this is not hearsay. This is not the coffee boy. This was the acting attorney general making these assertions against Clark and by extension against Trump.
Well, you know what Republicans are going to say, right?
Didn't do it. Wasn't me.
It
Wasn't
never,
Trump.
It never happened. It never came to fruition. So it's totally fine. And by the way, who let this story out and how did this come out? We have to go after the whistleblowers, whoever said anything that this happened.
The series of interactions between the president and Rosen and Donahue began in mid-December with an Oval Office meeting, included several phone calls, at least 9, and continued through January 3rd. In multiple calls, Trump claimed there was election fraud in Pennsylvania and Arizona, both states he lost. telling Rosen, people are saying, and asking the Justice Department to look into the rumors, according to the committee. Trump also told the DOJ leadership, you guys aren't following the internet the way I do, according to both Donahue and Rosen. Rosen told the president the department can't and won't just flip a switch and change the election. That prompted Trump to simply ask for an official justice announcement that the election was corrupt and then leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman, the committee report noted. The department hadn't found any widespread fraud in the election, and simultaneously, Trump's campaign was filing lawsuits to throw out millions of votes in swing states. Trump had Rosen and Clark vie for the attorney general's job, trial by combat, during the nearly 3-hour meeting on January 3rd before deciding not to replace Rosen with Clark, the report found. It also details how discussions about Clark's plan in Georgia became inextricably linked to talks about him replacing Rosen, sort of a quid pro quo, you might call it. According to Rosen, Trump opened the meeting by saying, one thing we know is you, Rosen, aren't going to do anything to overturn the election. He's saying the quiet part out loud, Fancy Brian. Here's again a quote. Over the course of the next 3 hours, the group had what Donahue called a wide-ranging conversation focused on whether Trump should replace DOJ leadership, install Clark in Rosen's place, and send Clark's proposed letter, and whether Clark was even qualified to assume the acting attorney general position. He probably wasn't. Rosen and Donahue told us that by that point, Clark's proposed letter and his potential role as acting attorney general were intertwined. So this is a big news day, to my perception, Fancy Brian. A lot going on. 9 times the president of the United States pressured the Department of Justice. They're the ones that bring the criminal indictments even against the former president. What are you waiting for, Merrick Garland?
Because Merrick Garland doesn't follow the internet the way that Trump does.
Well,
if he did, he'd understand.
I wish he was listening to this big show. More Devil's Advocates. It's going to be a big one. Join us, 844-967-2789.
The number of the day is 9.
There's a lot of, badness.
9 times.
9.
Let's have trial by combat.
9 times.
She can stand, she can do more. Like build a rocket and watch it soar. Clean the oceans and make the world a better place. Oh, she can STEM.
Learn more at She Can STEM. A message brought to you by the Ad Council.
600,000 Wisconsin families are receiving checks to help take care of their kids thanks to the expanded child tax credit passed by Joe Biden and congressional Democrats. Ron Johnson voted against these checks for Wisconsin families, despite voting for a 2017 tax break that put more money into the pockets of millionaires like himself. It's time to vote Ron Johnson out of office. MoveOn.org political action, paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising. Poll.moveon.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
President Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election.
Collectively, Republicans got 1.661 million votes, 51,000 more votes than Trump got.
He exhausted his cases. He exhausted the court challenges.
All the Republicans voted for Trump the way they voted for the assembly candidates. He would have won.
It was not rigged. It was not stolen. Donald Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election. It's really clear.
This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at p4ppc.org.
I think it's just vapor.
Vaping is safer than smoking, isn't it?
One vape pod has as much nicotine as 1 pack of cigarettes. Get your head out of the cloud. Talk to your kid about vaping. Visit talkaboutvaping.org. Brought to you by the American Lung Association and the Ad Council.
I'm not down for voter suppression in my
No, right. This. It's got to be easy. It was great to have these options. We should have these options. We should have days off for people to go vote. We should expand the availability, the ease of our own citizens in this country to participate in self-governance. Republicans, why are you so opposed to that?
Because they lose those elections.
Listen to Devil's Advocates weekdays from 2 to 5 p.m.
The Devil's Advocates. making radio great again.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, a Thursday edition, a really big show. Got a fine guest joining us soon. Former U.S. Attorney James Santelle helping us break down the headlines of the day in the Senate Judiciary Committee. And the Democrats led with their report. Effectively, they said that Donald Trump tried to perpetrate a coup d'etat of the United States. He was aided and abetted by a guy named Jeffrey Clark. And at least 9 freaking times he brought in, called, pressured Department of Justice senior level officials. And he and Clark had this scheme that, you know, they'd send a letter and declare the election in Georgia invalid.
9 times.
And if only Rosen, the acting attorney general, would agree to this, then Trump wouldn't have to fire Rosen and replace him with Jeffrey Clark, where Jeffrey Clark could do the very same thing. And the only thing, this 3-hour White House meeting on January 3rd, just a couple days before the January 6th insurrection, like Trump was desperate, like he knew something bad was going to happen. And let's not forget the calls to Raffensperger, in Georgia, the recorded calls, the Lordy There's Tapes calls, that happened before the special election happened in Georgia. Well, the special election was January 5th. The Capitol insurrection was January 6th. And I believe the recordings of those calls were made public on January 4th. Does that sound about right?
Yeah,
Pretty
that's
good
when
with timelines.
That's when I pulled the sound from it. I pulled all of it to go and, just to go and say, hey guys, look at this crazy phone call that Trump's. Oh my goodness, there's a bunch of people storming the Capitol right now.
Well, were it not for, let's call it a murder-suicide pact of the senior officials of the Trump administration, this perhaps would have succeeded. Trump effectively, trying to pressure everyone. Want to make sure I get the proper citation here. Raw story, always a good choice when you go with the raw story. Trump fumed that the acting attorney general wouldn't do anything to overturn the election at an Oval Office meeting, according to this newest Senate report. Donald Trump opened an Oval Office meeting on January 3rd by complaining to his acting attorney general that he wasn't doing enough to overturn his election loss. An interim report issued by the Senate Judiciary Committee shows that former acting attorney general Jeffrey Rosen recalled the White House meeting began with the ousted president pressuring him in front of other administration officials to undo his election loss, just 3 days before his supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol to stop the certification of Joe Biden's win, reporting according to the Daily Beast. One thing we know is you, Rosen, aren't going to do anything to overturn the election, Trump groused. The meeting ended with several Justice Department officials and White House counsel Pat Cipollone threatening to resign, a Saturday Night Massacre, if you would fancy, to resign if Trump replaced Rosen with a loyalist who would act to overturn the election. Beginning on the date, former Attorney General William Barr announced his resignation and continued almost until the January 6th insurrection. Trump directly and repeatedly asked DOJ's acting leadership to initiate investigations, file lawsuits on his behalf, and publicly declare the 2020 election corrupt, the report states. The interim report identifies 9 calls and meetings with Rosen and acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue between mid-December, when Barr announced he was leaving the administration, in early January, when Trump ordered them to help him stay in power. Trump had decided by January 3rd, when 2 such meetings occurred, that he would replace Rosen with lower-ranking Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark, who had allegedly urged Rosen and Donahue to falsely tell Georgia officials they had found problems with its election results. Well, I guess that's it, Donahue remembers telling Rosen after Clark told the acting attorney general that Trump wanted him to take over. Are we going to find out that we're fired in a tweet? At that point, I went back to my office and I began taking things off the walls and putting them in boxes, because I told the acting AG I would immediately resign. Donahue added, there was no way I was going to serve under Jeff Clark.
You know, that seems like a lot to do. You could have just been a better president and won more votes, but hey, whatever you got to do, I guess.
The threat of mass resignations, sort of a murder-suicide pact, the night of January 3rd. Trump wanted to do it. Trump had all the key players there. He had the plan in place, the scheme. He was going to replace Rosen with Clark if Rosen wouldn't do the right thing. And the right thing, according to Trump, was basically overturn the electoral results starting in the state of Georgia. Declare it corrupt. Just tell them, throw it to the Republican-controlled legislature. Special election, or maybe they just pick the slot of electors.
What a great person. What a great group of people to be associated with and want to be a part of.
That makes me wonder, why are there not Department of Justice, let's call them indictments, against Jeffrey Clark, against Donald Trump? Why don't we have some sort of public indictment of the president? This seems like very troubling behavior. You've got specific, if you can't trust the acting attorney general to bear witness in a court of law against the former president, who are you going to trust? So anyways, that's where we find ourselves this fine Thursday.
The anticipation's killing me. I hope it'll last.
Well, we got James Santelle, former U.S. attorney, joining us next. And, the news is tightening around Donald Trump's neck. Also, the Weisselberg in New York, the only plausible defense now Weisselberg's left with.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
Just incompetence. Otherwise, he's guilty, right? He's guilty or he's incompetent. Well, maybe a little bit of both, but I suspect it's the, it's the latter.
You are either lying or stupid.
Well, I think it's probably terrible corruption. Folks, we're the devil's advocates. There's also a federal court that has stayed the Texas apportion law. So I would say that's good news. An immediate appeal to the 5th District. That will probably mean a ruling eventually by the U.S. Supreme Court, which by 5-4 prior decided not to take up the case. Come back with us. James Santelle, my good friend, former U.S. attorney, is next.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have.
Was that wrong? 9 times.
I find your lack of Devil Radio 92.7 disturbing. Do not fail me again.
Hey, I'm Noemi.
And I am Cecily. We are the directors of In Pursuit of Sunshine, a youth organization hosting October's Month of Action to combat climate change.
According to climate.gov, since 2009, atmospheric CO2 levels have been increasing by 2.3 parts per million per year. If we fail to act, the delicate balance of systems that make our planet a safe place to live will be permanently damaged. But we won't allow that to happen.
Now more than ever, it's essential to hold our representatives accountable to their climate agendas.
Do you know what your representatives are doing for the climate?
If not, go to conservationvoters.org/vote-tracker.
That's conservationvoters.org/vote-tracker. Find out today and make your next vote sustainable, equitable, and responsible.
Keep listening every day in October to find out how you can hold your representatives accountable.
Tune in tomorrow on Devil Radio 92.7 FM. That's the sauce.
Donahue with an AP News Minute. Senate leaders say they reached a deal to temporarily avoid a debt crisis.
I have some good news.
Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says the agreement would extend the debt ceiling into early December.
And it's our hope that we can get this done as soon as today.
That would temporarily end a standoff over lifting the nation's borrowing cap. GOP Chief Mitch McConnell was ready to block a longer-term suspension of the debt ceiling before offering a short-term fix last night.
The Senate is moving toward the plan I laid out yesterday to spare the American people a manufactured crisis.
The agreement comes after President Biden and business leaders warned of a pending catastrophe if the nation defaulted on its debt. Sagar Magani, Washington.
A letter sent by his lawyers says former President Donald Trump intends to assert executive privilege in a congressional investigation into the January Capitol riot. It could prevent the testimony of one-time aides. I'm Ed Donahue.
Oh, according to research, 82% of people remember radio ads. That means that 82% of you listening right now will remember that this is an ad for ZipRecruiter. If you're hiring, 82% of you will recall that ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster and easier. And 82% of you will note that you can try ZipRecruiter for free today. But you have to go to ZipRecruiter.com/free. Yes, free. 82% of you will keep in mind that ZipRecruiter's technology finds qualified people for your job and actively invites them to apply.
Is that you? Who are you talking to?
82% of you will also know that I live with my mom. But the most important thing to note is that ZipRecruiter works. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Will you be part of the 82% who remember where you can try ZipRecruiter for free? It's ZipRecruiter.com/free. Again, that exclusive link is ZipRecruiter.com/free. How much? Free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Double Radio 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM. I'm Brian Kelly with your headlines. Yesterday, former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Michael Gableman, who is leading a partisan investigation into the 2020 election, says he does not know how elections work. In an interview, Gableman said, quote, "Most people, myself included, do not have a comprehensive understanding or even any understanding of how elections work." Despite not knowing how elections work, Gableman claimed at a rally 10 months ago that elected officials allowed bureaucrats to, quote, "steal our vote." Speaker Robin Voss had originally set a deadline of October 31st for the taxpayer-funded investigation, but Gableman said that is unrealistic. Today, all-day rain, highs in the mid-60s. Tonight, lows in the mid-60s with showers overnight. Tomorrow, rain, highs in the mid-60s. You're listening to Double Radio 92.7 FM, WTTN 1580 AM.
I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for those meddling devil's advocates.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the Thursday edition. It gets better right now. I got a fine guest. He is former U.S. Attorney James Santelle, friend of ours. Jim, the timing, it's impeccable, sir. Lots of stuff to talk about.
Our timing is always impeccable, right, Mike, including today.
Well, let's hope so. Jim, got you on the phone today. I appreciate you joining us. I got to start with this Senate report, and it enumerates at least 9 instances of President Donald Trump pressuring senior DOJ officials, including Rosen and Donahue, and he's got a co-conspirator in Jeffrey Clark. And basically, Jim, as I interpret this, Donald Trump is trying to coup d'etat. He is trying to overturn the outcome of the election. Do you see it differently, sir?
I do not. And as someone much brighter and more inside than I am, I've recently observed, first he tried all of these 50 or 60 different lawsuits around the country trying to overturn the election. This may well have been part 2, the second effort to try to subvert the Department of Justice and basically command them to declare the election invalid and the voting inadequate and to support Joe Biden's presidency. And the third portion of it, of course, was January 6th. So then we just resorted to riot. Alternative theories to stay in the presidency, all of them in the nature of an attempt to undermine government. And these are the kinds of things, again, but for a couple of people like Jeffrey Rosen and others there at the Department of Justice there who refused to resign, refused to go along with this, or they would resign en masse. This could have been even more tragic than it already is.
Jim, this report was issued by the Senate Judiciary Committee, and it's now Dick Durbin that has the gavel of that committee, I believe. I know the Democrats control it. Jim, this will be described as a partisan report, and I saw Dick Grassley from Iowa was already pushing back on the report, apparently condoning the behavior of this former president. And Jim, the fact that other Republicans will shrug or they'll hide from this headline leaves me with the impression for this nation to get any sort of justice, it's got to come from the Department of Justice. So what's Merrick Garland waiting for? How thorough does this need to be when it's such rampant, blatant criminality that the Judiciary Committee already investigated it and rolled out a 400-page report?
Absolutely. And we've talked about this in so many other ways, right, Mike, that we have seen this before. we've sort of become immune, and I think that's part of the problem today. We've become immune to the outrage because they continue to flow in, not just in real time, but also now historically. So we've seen so much of this that we're inclined as a nation just to look at this and say, well, we'll chalk it up to just more bad behavior by our former president. It is not that. And I'll repeat what I've said before when we've talked about these kinds of things, including January 6th. I am very hopeful. I'm hopeful that Lisa Monaco and the head of the criminal division and others in the Department of Justice, very much with the support and encouragement of our Attorney General, have open files on all these matters. And then, of course, they're not talking about them at all, but that at some point, this will not be simply a Capitol Hill matter, but it will be on 9th and Constitution, which is where the Department of Justice is located. And again, the list of things that are indictable here, that are viable charges to present to a grand jury and then to a trial jury, continue to grow. This just adds more to that whole corpus, if you will, of evidence that this was an attempt to undermine the government, again, to overthrow a legitimate election. That is illegal. That is criminal conduct. And now we plainly have the testimony of at least 3 individuals from the Department of Justice confirming that. I am hopeful that the FBI is also talking with them privately, and that they're also developing what are called 302s, which are the interviews of reports of the interviews with them. And at some point soon, to your delight and I think the satisfaction of most of America, that Merrick Garland will in fact be announcing some charges here. This is just the latest shoe that's dropping. Words again fail. Outrage, horror, shock, and criminality all come to mind.
Jim, I could understand a certain reluctance of, let's say, the DA of Fulton County of Georgia, being reluctant to charge a former president and questioning whether or not they would have the resources to properly prosecute this case, because Georgia was one of the states targeted by Trump. And we know about some of these phone calls, Jim, because we've heard the tapes. And we now know that Jeffrey Clark basically had this plan to declare the election in Georgia corrupt and send it to the state legislature. And if Rosen wasn't willing to participate, well, then Trump could simply replace Rosen with Clark, and Clark could fulfill this plan. So, Jim, I understand why a local DA might be reluctant to bring charges against the former president of the United States, but doesn't that also reinforce the rationale for the DOJ to prosecute the larger case?
The Department of Justice has a great many resources. Plainly that a local district attorney does not. That is not in any way to denigrate the important and good work, outstanding work that local DAs do all the time in this country, very much in partnership with the federal government, with local authorities as well. But you're absolutely right, Mike, that the Department of Justice, obviously the FBI, the resources there at Maine Justice, 10,000 employees around the nation, not that every single one of them would be assigned to this case, but they have the resources to do this. And look at the other things that they're doing. Obviously today, last night, a good result out of the Texas abortion challenge. That's done by lawyers at the Department of Justice challenging that. And we don't know if that's going to last, but the resources are there to do this. And I would simply add, to get back to my very first point, that in some ways, the Fulton County matter can and should be prosecuted as well, even though that's right. The DA there, she seems to be a very competent and bright person. Plainly does not have the resources probably to push back on Donald Trump's legal counsel. On the other hand, maybe she has got many, many more resources given what we've seen of their record recently. But that case too, like all the others, it is clear. As you said, he is on tape. The former president's on tape, asking for 11,450 votes. That again is a violation of federal law, trying to undermine and skew an election. You can identify about 5 or 6 different statutes in the federal criminal code that is violative of. And certainly you can do the same when it comes to the state of Georgia. And so I would not be at all surprised if she at some point does say, you know what, with my perhaps admittedly modest resources here in Atlanta, nonetheless, I'm going to go ahead and do this because it is right to do it. And so the resources issue is big, but doesn't mean that the state DAs and states attorneys around the country should not also be doing their jobs. And we should not be backing off just because this man is the former president of the United States.
Well, Jim, I would like to see both state and local prosecutions of Trump, because I don't want some future Republican administration, let's call it the Pence administration, issuing a Gerald Ford-like pardon for Donald Trump and letting him completely off the hook for trying to coup d'etat the presidency of the United States. That's James Santelle. He's my fine guest. for at least the next 20 minutes ish. See how much time, maybe 15. I know you got other appointments, Jim, and an important, busy man that you are. Jim, let me ask you. Dick Durbin today laid out in part of the Judiciary Committee. Step one was the failed Trump lawsuits, 60 plus, Rudy and the crack and all the stupid lawsuits, the meritless lawsuits, they all failed. And step two was this pressuring of the DOJ, the senior officials. But step three, Jim, seemingly was the insurrection on January 6th. And today is deadline day for subpoenas. And Mark Meadows and others, top Trump aides, are being encouraged. The letter I saw reportedly, Trump is telling them, do not respond to the subpoenas for documents. Do not give testimony. I'm claiming executive privilege on everything. Jim, the January 6th investigation, the congressional, the Hill investigation of the January 6th, how does this next step play out, sir? Are we going to see contempt of Congress charges?
A number of different ways. Again, the best way, which is probably almost certainly as we sit here now at 3:42 Eastern time, 2:42 obviously Central time here, and there's been no compliance. The documents are not forthcoming, and plainly no plans to interview them next week. Highly likely, and not only with the encouragement of the former president, but all four of them will say we're not complying at all. President invokes once again this notion of executive privilege. As we've said before, it's not his to invoke. Not only is he not the president, but it's owned by the White House. It's owned by the executive office of the presidency. And it's a concept that, again, the courts have wrestled with and basically found that, yes, there's a concept there, but it's not unlimited. It doesn't basically say that, well, anything you've done as the president, anything you've said is not subject to disclosure. Just the opposite. There's a presumption of transparency in the law, and the courts have pretty much supported that. As I look at this, you think about the three alternatives, which we've also talked about, as these four plainly are in contempt by virtue of they're not doing anything. And at the end of the day today here, one of them, of course, is civil contempt. The other one is criminal contempt, and that's referring to main justice. As we've seen, that very infrequently results in prosecutions, although there have been some in the past historically. And the third one that I think the Congress has got to consider, which is just its inherent authority as sending out the sergeant at arms to arrest these people and bring them back into the well of the Congress to respond to their failure to appear. I know it sounds extreme. It's sometimes referred to as the nuclear option here, and when it comes to enforcing subpoenas. But it's got to be on the table too. Why? Because if none of these other avenues works, this is just more sanctioning for the future, which you're just talking about. You don't enforce something here, legitimate subpoenas for a legitimate purpose, if you don't do something to ensure that people who thwart that process are responsible for their actions, are accountable for them, and are frankly forced to pay for that contempt. This will just go on in future administrations. So I think all three of those have got to be on the table. We live in extraordinary times, Mike, as you well know, and this notion again of sending out through the inherent powers of the Congress, going back, reaching back hundreds of years perhaps, and finding that authority once again, sending your congressional local gendarme, if you will, to arrest these people and bring them back. It sounds outrageous, I know, but it's got to be on the table. And Dick Durbin and others have got to be the people who consider that kind of thing, because the consequences in the opposite direction are simply too great.
Jim, doesn't seem nearly harsh or outrageous enough in light of what's being charged or alleged here. James Santelle, my fine guest, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Jim, one of the Trump aides, former Trump aide, Dan Scabino, couldn't even be physically served with the documentation. Is that more than a temporary delay? Obviously, we know, who was it? Gozer that was avoiding being served as well, the congressman, the Republican.
Right.
Does the simple failure to make proper service, is that anything more than a delay tactic, Jim?
It may well be. Again, there may be an evasive attempt here for Gosars and obviously for Scavino and others to try to avoid literally having the process served upon them. However, it is a significant legal event, and whether it's a civil case, criminal subpoenas, the grand jury subpoenas, there is this very important concept in the law that you need to be physically given that notice, or sometimes you can accept it. You can accept it through your attorney or otherwise acknowledge receipt in other ways. But absent that that thing being done, literally providing that person with notice that you are commanded to come here on this day to provide testimony, service is an important threshold matter. And none of those contempt possibilities or inherent authorities can be pursued until you are able to establish that indeed I have served this person, and he or she, perhaps down the road, is in contempt of that obligation to come back that's set forth on that subpoena. So it's not an unimportant matter. And as to one of these four, it remains obviously some homework that the United States Congress and the Select Committee still needs to work on.
Jim, about 90 seconds here. Mark Meadows, the chief of staff, if he is deposed, that's going to be a nightmare for Trump, don't you think?
You know, you'd like to think that at some point, Mark Meadows would also recognize, although we've said this many times before, that this is about his future, not just his reputation, but his future as well. And again, we continue to see all these books coming out, including most recently from his once silent President Trump's once silent press secretary, which have greater or lesser merit, depending upon how you view all that. All of these things comment upon his behavior, the extent to which he himself supported the president in doing what he did, including January 6th and these events of days before. He will be under oath. He will be under oath. And this committee is plainly getting other information from other people, other documents. If he lies about something that's material and substantive, that's perjury. And not only is that undermining the regular course of the investigation, but also exposes him to the possibility of criminal charges as well. And we've seen that. We've seen that in the past. Perjury,
Hold tight, James Santelle. Come back. We'll take more of the former U.S. Attorney Jim Santelle, more devil's advocates.
I'm holding you in contempt of court.
9 times.
Oh, thank God we live in this time.
Hey, Wisconsin, this is Kirk Bankstad, and I own the Minocqua Brewing Company. Usually, I promote my progressive beer on this station, but today I wanted to promote these guys at Devil Radio. Devil Radio is the only progressive talk station in the state, and there are no less than 81 conservative talk stations in Wisconsin that spew crazy Trump cult rhetoric. While the Republicans have big pockets to fund these stations and manipulate Wisconsinites to vote against their own interests, Democrats have to rely on grassroots donations to get their message out. So I'm asking you to donate some money to these guys and keep them on the air. And I'm asking you to do it in September because every dollar you donate this month will be matched by an anonymous donor that cares about making Wisconsin a democracy again and knows that this radio station helps with that mission. So please donate today at devilradio927.com at the Support Devil Radio tab. Again, send some big bucks to devilradio927.com at the Support Devil Radio tab.
600,000 Wisconsin families are receiving checks to help take care of their kids thanks to the expanded child tax credit passed by Joe Biden and congressional Democrats. Ron Johnson voted against these checks for Wisconsin families, despite voting for a 2017 tax break that put more money into the pockets of millionaires like himself. It's time to vote Ron Johnson out of office. MoveOn.org political action, paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertisement. Poll.moveon.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
The Devil's Advocates.
James Santelle, he's a former U.S. attorney. He's our guest live on Brady.
Once again, a pleasure to be with you, gentlemen, to talk about the latest news breaking as we speak.
The FBI raided Michael Cohen, Trump's personal attorney, but once they got there, then they went back and got a more thorough warrant and said, we'll take everything.
My first reaction is you need to teach criminal constitutional law. You've got it just right in terms of the process.
They are kind of a big deal.
This is a really big deal.
Charged, never convicted. Dom and Croat are the Devil's Advocates.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Got a fine former U.S. attorney and friend of ours, James Santelle, on the line. Jim, thanks for sticking around and thanks for taking my call and coming on short notice. I thought the headlines of the day merited your appearance, sir, and I appreciate you doing so. Jim,
it's an amazing time in American history, right?
It is. It certainly is. You know, thank goodness I got a radio show. I get to digest it each day in real time. But Jim, let me ask you, the New York State prosecution of Donald Trump, at least we presumed that they're going to get to Trump. They've been prosecuting the Trump org, and there have been indictments of the Trump org CFO, Alan Weisselberg. And my understanding is Weisselberg really is limited in the number of defenses he might have to offer. I saw at the Daily Beast earlier this week, Jim. One of the only defenses he may have to offer, Jim, is gross incompetence. As a guy who signed off on the corporate books, and the fact that there might be two sets of books seems implausible that he's that incompetent and yet also pulling all the strings, Jim. What's your thought on the most recent revelations about Weisselberg?
All right. Saw that reporting as well. It strikes me, as it does you, and I'm sure all your listeners as well, that when your best and perhaps first defense is that I am completely incompetent, I had no idea what I was doing, and for that reason, I don't have the criminal intent to do what the government says I'm doing, I am at the end of my rope. And again, other reasons perhaps to push back on specific charges here. But as you indicated, there are two sets of books that need to be explained. There are all these other transactions. Obviously, a daughter-in-law here is also talking a lot to the DA about things that she knows in terms of not only tuition support for their children, but other things that she saw from not too far distant in all this. So there are a lot of things about his conduct that plainly are probably inexplicable, absent saying, I had no idea what I was doing. It is remarkable, candidly. He says, I think at one point, that he was not even aware of the fact that he was the CEO of a particular charity that was set up. Well, you've got to know that. You've got to be in a position to know that. And I think it's a defense that frankly, given all the other things he was doing at a sophisticated level, and that's what the prosecutors would show, this is not a man who was bungling through day after day after day, but doing other things like engaging in financial transactions, plainly having conversations, doing business. Much of it may well have been corrupt and criminal, but nonetheless, it's competent, it's cognitively aware. And that's the kind of thing that prosecutors will present if, in fact, this is the best that Weisselberg can do, that I was simply out of my sphere. I had no idea what was going on. Again, it is a reflection of how bad all of this Trump arena, this Trump sphere has been for years and years and years.
Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the finest of guests, former U.S. Attorney, friend of ours, James Santelle. Jim, want to turn towards the backyard audit, forensic audit, cyber ninja audit of the electoral outcome in the state of Wisconsin. And my understanding is, I believe the cyber ninja guy gave some testimony today in Arizona and said effectively, we didn't find what Trump said we found. But that's not going to prevent Wisconsin Republicans at the direction of, I described him as a corrupted former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice, Michael Gableman, but sort of an astonishing statement of Gableman, who's entrusted with this partisan investigation, Jim. The guy came on the record yesterday and basically said, I don't understand the nature of how elections work. And this guy is the guy in charge of investigating the electoral outcome in the state of Wisconsin on behalf of Republicans. Jim, want to get your comments on Gableman. Again, looking to my thesaurus for synonyms for outrageous, incredible, unbelievable. Number one, you are a former Supreme Court justice, you're a lawyer, and if you are tapped to do this, and you say to yourself, gosh, I really don't have the expertise to do this, the answer is I can't do it, and you should respectfully decline because it's beyond the scope of your abilities. Or the second alternative is, I've got a general sense of this, maybe it's the common sense the public has, but I'm going to surround myself with people who do know what's going on, and I'm going to school myself so that I understand exactly how this works, so that my subpoenas, which he has sent out, my requests for information, my proposed interviews, all of that is directed to things that are premised upon how the election actually works. Absent doing one of those two things, either deciding not to do this at all, or if you feel you have got to be educated, then educate yourself and come up to the desk, if you will, with that competent level of review and capacity. You shouldn't be there. And once again, like the Arizona enterprise, that audit, so to speak, that scheme down there, this once again is, forgive me, Keystone Cops. It is incompetence. It's the other bookend to the Weisselberg story. Got more of it. It is embarrassing for the former Supreme Court Justice. It is shocking. It is shocking to all residents of the state of Wisconsin, regardless of what party you're in, not only now because
of the nature of this thing, which is going nowhere. It's not going to produce anything. But now we've got a public acknowledgement that the person who's in charge of this tells us, frankly, we have high marks for candor, but it tells us that he is not up to the job. This is government and non-government at its very worst.
Well, I found it ironic, Gableman, this special counselor we're describing, when speaking to the press earlier this week and, sort of being chastised for misspellings in the subpoenas, said, well, there was only one perfect human and what we did to him, making a Jesus allusion, I think, Jim. Anyways, Gableman also issued subpoenas for mayors, specifically 5 Democratic mayors, I believe, and a city clerk that plays no part in elections. I mean, I know the guy made a ready public admission. He doesn't understand how elections are administered, Jim, but mayors play zero part, do they?
Right. Absolutely right. And again, let's think about the reason that the basis upon which anybody, whether you're a committee of Congress, of the state legislature, or you are a specially appointed investigator, which apparently is what the former Supreme Court justice is. Before you do that, and this he does know as a lawyer, as a former judge, before you issue any subpoena, you have to have some basis upon which to believe that I'm going to get some discoverable information, some material, something relevant to this. Not only can I not engage in a fishing expedition, but you can think of a million different examples. I'm not going to subpoena the wonderful person who checks me out at the grocery store to find out about a school board policy, right? You've got to be able to identify who the people are who have the information out there and direct the subpoenas to those proper people. Once again, negligence is a nice way of putting it. This random notion that, well, maybe these mayors have some information out there. That is, frankly, I would say that was use of the court process. And again, he knows better than that.
Jim, you realize that Gableman, utilizing the special counselor's office, is doing a Regis office share with a liposuction clinic. So when he's issuing these subpoenas, I'm not even clear if he's asking for public testimony or you come down to the liposuction clinic. James Santelle, I surely appreciate you answering my call, man. Glad it didn't have to be under subpoena, sir. We'll catch up with you real quick. Have a great weekend, Jim. Thanks for joining us.
It is always a pleasure, Mike. We'll talk with you again soon. Take care.
More Devils. We'll be right back.
They hire usually good people.
You are either lying or you're stupid. I'm stupid. I'm stupid.
9 times.
This is Chad Spate. Are you thinking about improving or expanding your home? At Chad's Design Build, we're committed to making your home comfortable, healthy, attractive, durable, and sustainable. In fact, those commitments spell our name. And we deliver these services with our outstanding team of professionals who will respect you and your home. Visit our website at chadsdesignbuild.com to learn more about how we are building a better world, one remodeled home at a time.
Hey, I'm here from Knuckleheads. Have you seen our new location yet? Come on down to 520 State Street for all your CBD needs. We have a huge selection of gummies, oils, and a variety of other CBD products. We also have a gigantic walk-in humidor. The knowledgeable staff at Knuckleheads will work with you to find exactly what you need. Mention Devil Radio at checkout to get 15% off your next order. Knuckleheads, now at 520 State Street. We'll see you there.
You are listening to WTTN 1580 AM Columbus and W224 EG 92.7 FM Madison. Always streaming on the Devil Radio app.
AP News. I'm Ed Donahue. President Biden is near Chicago.
Think about this. 700,000 people dead in the United States. That's more than every war we fought by double.
He's visiting a construction site run by Clayco, a large building firm set to announce a new vaccinate or test requirement for its workforce.
And we're saving lives. This has been the most recent pandemic is a consequence of the unvaccinated.
The president wants to require shots for employees without offering a test out option. Pfizer is asking the Food and Drug Administration to allow kids 5 through 11 to get its coronavirus vaccine. Brittany Preibel's 8-year-old son has been taking part in a Pfizer study.
They're not little
adults. They're little humans. And we do want to make sure that it is absolutely safe for them. But I will be overjoyed when it happens.
If approved, kids 5 through 11 could be getting shots within weeks. The number of people filing for unemployment dropped last week. Here's the AP's Ben Thomas.
The Labor Department says 326,000 Americans applied for unemployment benefits last week, a drop of 38,000 and the first in 4 weeks. But it resumes the year-long trend of declining weekly applications, which hit a peak of more than 900,000 in early January.
The governors of 4 Northeast states are going to share information about firearms purchases to help detect and investigate straw buyers and other gun crimes. Phil Murphy is the governor of New Jersey.
The reality is that guns don't understand the concept of state lines, but those who purchase them do. Working together, we can, as a region, put in place the safeguards we need to combat the trade in illicit guns.
The other states are New York, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. Abortions quickly resumed at some clinics in Texas. A federal judge halted one of the strictest abortion laws in the country. Amy Hagstrom Miller, president of Whole Women's Health, says phone lines are busy with people making appointments. This is AP News.
According to research, 82% of people remember radio ads. That means that 82% of you listening right now will remember that this is an ad for ZipRecruiter. If you're hiring, 82% of you will recall that ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster and easier. And 82% of you will note that you can try ZipRecruiter for free today. But you have to go to ZipRecruiter.com/free. Yes, free. 82% of you will keep in mind that ZipRecruiter's technology finds qualified people for your job and actively invites them to apply.
Is that you? Who are you talking to?
82% of you will also know that I live with my mom. But the most important thing to note is that ZipRecruiter works. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Will you be part of the 82% who remember where you can try ZipRecruiter for free? It's ZipRecruiter.com/free. Again, that exclusive link is ZipRecruiter.com/free. How much? Free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
We're putting the band back together.
Sexy Liberal is in person again, this time in Madison.
Okay, fine. Madison it is.
At the Barrymore Theater, October 23rd. All 4 cast members will be on stage performing together.
I'm going into Wisconsin.
Stephanie Miller.
Can I just go with bunker bitch? How many times did you actually put your diaper in your little bunker?
John Fugelsang.
What a pleasure it is to be in a room full of so many atheists doing the Lord's work.
Comedy duo Frangela.
Y'all are some sexy liberals. Yes.
And Hal Sparks.
I got kicked out of the South for thinking too much.
All live and in person at the Barrymore Theater in Madison on October 23rd. But if you can't get to Wisconsin in October, the show will also be simulcast live via pay-per-view on Meathook. Come see the show live or stay at home and watch in the comfort of your living room. A limited number of post-show meet and grope tickets will be available at the Barrymore show. And please, all attendees need to be vaccinated to attend the live show. October 23rd at the Barrymore in Madison. Sexy Liberal return.
Hey, this is Rocker, and I'm back on the patio at Salvatore's Tomato Pies on East Wash. I'm having a brand new cocktail you just have to try. It's called Divide and Concord. It features Rocker vodka along with Concord grape, thyme, St. Elizabeth's dram, and a touch of lemon lime. Ask for it by name, Divide and Concord at Salvatore's Tomato Pies. Find Rocker vodka and Rocker rye whiskey at Vic Pierce on Sherman Avenue. Please drink responsibly. Hey man, you still driving to Beloit for gummies and carts?
Yeah, man, it's a real drag.
Well, stop wasting gas, man, and ride your bike over to Williamson Street and stop into Quality CBD. They have gummies and carts.
Huh? They have gummies?
And all your favorites like Delta 8, Delta 10, and THCP.
Wow, man, where are they located?
Find Quality CBD at 1222 Williamson Street in Madison. For more information, visit qualitycbd.org. That's qualitycbd.org.
Radio 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM. I'm Brian Kelly with your headlines. Wisconsin's DPI superintendent wants the legislature to stay out of public construction. In an interview with WSAW, Superintendent Jill Underly said, quote, "When you look at the way we finance schools, that has become incredibly partisan. We need to take the emotion out of things. We need to stop micromanaging our local school boards. We need to stop micromanaging our schools. And for that matter, where we're at with DPI, we also want the legislature to stop micromanaging us too. We have certain things we're supposed to do for all schools in the state, and we'd like to do our jobs." End quote. In recent weeks, Wisconsin Republicans have proposed limitations on what can be taught in schools, centering around critical race theory, as well as a proposal to eliminate the office of superintendent altogether. You're listening to Devil Radio 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM.
Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever. And due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening. Now live from the heart of liberal Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning, welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Best friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Now here are your hosts, Dom and Kroot.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the Thursday edition. In the entirety of the first hour, it was great. Where were you? Did you miss it? You better have been here. I want to thank our most recent guest, the fine one, former U.S. Attorney James Santelle. And most of the conversation in hour one, Fancy Brian, was about this Judiciary Committee, Senate Judiciary Committee report that said Donald Trump pressured the DOJ at least 9 times. Senior level officials. There was a murder-suicide pact. You know, had they not Cipollone, the White House counsel, and Donahue and Rosen, had they all not threatened to basically resign on January 3rd, well, Jeffrey Clark, this co-conspirator, this lower level DOJ official, who Donald Trump was more than willing to fire Rosen and implant Jeffrey Clark in that position. And Clark's big scheme was tied to declaring Georgia a corrupt election that needed to be overturned, or at least reviewed by the Georgia legislature, Republican controlled. And this was a pretty well-conceived active scheme. I'm not saying well-conceived in that it, should have been done, but well-conceived, meaning lots and lots of planning in the scheme. And then, of course, came January 6th. That was step 3. Step 1 was the lawsuits, according to Dick Durbin. Step 2 was the pressure campaign on the Department of Justice. And we know, sort of in tandem with that pressure campaign on senior DOJ leaders, was the pressure campaign on state leaders in the state of Georgia, Raffensperger and others. And we've heard the tapes. Lordy, there's tapes. And step 3, of course, was the Capitol insurrection. And we're waiting for the January 6th committee, the House Select Committee. And we've got new subpoenas being issued. Fancy Brian, you had
to
a thought?
say they're on to step 4 right now. Profit. He's now been running profit. He's been asking for money because, oh my goodness, this whole January 6th thing, oh my goodness, I need money. And now he's going to be running. And so, yeah, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, profit.
Steal underwear. Step 3,
profit.
January 6th committee subpoenas Stop the Steal rally organizer. This reporting over at the Politico, Kyle Cheney. The January 6th Select Committee on Thursday subpoenaed Ellie Alexander, a key figure behind the Stop the Steal movement that aided former President Donald Trump's effort to overturn the 2020 election. The subpoena was one of 3 issued today, Thursday, by the House panel investigating the Capitol attack, targeting a divisive hardline conservative who had regular communication with Trump allies, including some congressional Republicans, in the crucial weeks after President Joe Biden's win. Here is a quote. The rally on the Capitol grounds on January 6th, like the rally near the White House that day, immediately preceded the violent attack on the seat of our democracy. That's what Chair Benny Thompson said in a statement on the committee's 3rd round of subpoenas, referring to the Stop the Steal sponsored event that metastasized into a riot or a, attempted coup d'etat, I would say. Let me read more here. Over the course of that day, demonstrations escalated to violence and protesters became rioters. The Select Committee needs to understand all the details about the events came before the attack, including who was involved in the planning and funding them. We expect these witnesses to cooperate fully with our probe. It's going to be awfully hard for Ali Alexander to claim some sort of executive privilege. And I don't think Trump can claim that he was in the White House. Well, maybe he was, but he didn't hold any official position with the Trump administration. A little bit more here from Politico. In addition to Alexander, the subpoenas target Nathan Martin, another organizer of the pre-insurrection rally and the Stop the Steal organization. The previous round of 11 subpoenas targeted other Trump allies who helped organize various events in the run-up to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. And 4 close Trump associates, including former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, are facing a Thursday, again today, subpoena deadline to turn over documents to the committee. Martin and Alexander have 2 weeks until October 21st to respond to the panel's demand for documents. The committee set an October 28th deposition for Martin and a October 29th deposition for Ali Alexander, while the group, the Stop the Steal, has 1 week to produce documents. That's not even 9 days. A little bit more here. Alexander said in a since deleted video that he worked, and he's naming names here, with reps, Republican reps, all Paul Gozer of Arizona, Mo Brooks of Alabama, and Andy Biggs of Arizona to attempt to use Congress's January 6th session certifying Biden's victory as a chance to pressure lawmakers to overturn the electoral results. We four schemed up to put maximum pressure on Congress while they were voting. Sounds like he's laying out exactly what happened here. It's unclear if any of the subpoena recipients intend to comply with the committee's orders. Trump has directed Meadows and other close aides to defy the committee's demands, a likely precursor to an intense legal battle to force them to cooperate. Trump himself intends to block the National Archives from sending his former White House records to the committee, which promises to ignite another significant court fight. Some watchdog and civil rights group had raised concerns about the panel's plans to seek information from those related to organizing the rallies. The Project on Government Oversight sent a letter to the committee on Tuesday, urging them to use caution with individuals' private data. While claims of election fraud were baseless and have seriously undermined public faith in our democracy, false and grossly offensive speech is still constitutionally protected. Accordingly, we urge committees to be especially cautious in its demand for records that could implicate First Amendment rights or set precedent for future demands that chill First Amendment protected activities, wrote POGO Executive Director Danielle Bryan. Well, POGO Director Bryan, here's what I would say. You lose some of those protected First Amendment rights when you start yelling fire in the crowded movie theater, when you incite an insurrection, when you foment it, when you organize it, when you fundraise for it, when you have the people show up to it. That sort of diminishes your claims that you should have privacy in your communications leading up to this criminal offense, this treasonous, seditionist offense. So I'm less sympathetic to the pleadings.
These guys seem to be pretty damn loyal because they don't work for the guy anymore, and they're still carrying water for him, and they're still listening to him when he tells them not to do anything. And by the way, if you or I, let's say you, after being arrested with the protests, the Act 10 protests and everything, what if you were subpoenaed and you decided to say, you know what? No, my ex-boss told me I shouldn't, so no.
Well,
what would happen to you?
You can go and ignore a subpoena. You can respond to a subpoena, and then you can go and plead the fifth. You can say, I preserve my right against self-incrimination. You have the right to go do that, but you cannot avoid giving sworn testimony. You can be compelled to give that sworn testimony. And I know I sure as hell would be on the receiving end of some sort of contempt citation. And I think that is warranted. I mean, it's past due time. Why are we waiting? What is the Department of Justice waiting on? I mean, we have this sort of information in the public record. If the Judiciary Committee can compile a 400-page report of this sort, which seemingly lays out this very implicit plot to overturn the outcome of the election, you've got the named people, you know who the conspirators were. I mean, there could be more criminal prosecutions, sort of ancillary prosecutions of guys like Ali Alexander, but I'm less worried about the Stop the Steal guy in the short run than I am about the the recipient, the beneficiary of the prior coup d'etat, or at least the attempted coup d'etat. I'm more worried about the prosecution of Donald Trump. And I cannot understand. I'd love to hear from our audience. Where are you on this topic? I mean, I'm out of patience. And I'm not just talking as a partisan. I'm not just talking about this, a progressive liberal. And by the way, the phone number, if you're unaware, 844-967-2789. You can call us. You can text us. But Fancy, I'm about out of patience. I want ramifications. I want indictments. You might be able to avoid a congressional subpoena, but if your ass is going to jail, if you are being criminally prosecuted, well, you're right. You might not have to give a deposition, not in a civil court sort of fashion. No, you are a criminal defendant. And let's lay out the evidence and let's let the jury decide. I'm sick of this wussy walk around, congressional investigation kind of stuff, because they don't have teeth. They don't have the power of criminal indictments and prosecutions. All they can do is refer to the DC Law Board. Hey, that Jeffrey Clark, he tried to overturn, the duly elected presidency of the United States. I think you should look at his law license. ? That isn't enough. Guy should be sitting in jail. The guy should be defending himself, due process as extended by the U.S. Constitution. But above and beyond that, if you're treasonous, if you're seditionist, charge to the maximum and permissible limits of the law and start holding people accountable, because our democracy demands it, Merrick Garland. Crudy demands it. The devil's advocates demand it. Fancy, do you demand it?
If on Sunday,
are you with me on this one?
If on Sunday some defensive back keeps hitting everybody that the Packers have 9 times in the helmet with no penalty flag whatsoever, everybody in the world will be pissed off. But this happens over here, and you're like, well, subpoenas, I don't understand what subpoenas are. Nobody gets really mad about it, but this is crap. This is crap.
Well, I'm not clear how Republicans can pretend like this Senate Judiciary Committee report doesn't exist. The contents aren't damning to the former president. Of course, some of their buddies might be complicit, but I would say the vast majority of U.S. senators, Republican or Democrats, are probably law-abiding citizens, excepting a few. Looking at you, Holly, looking at you, Ted Cruz. But if you don't have fear of prosecution, what are you fearful of? The former president? The treasonous, seditionist former president of the United States? What is the fear? The fear should be of prosecution. The fear should be of the Department of Justice. Come back with us. I'm ranting. 844-967-2789. You could rant.
The day Richard Nixon failed to answer that subpoena is the day that he was subject to impeachment, because he took the power from Congress over the impeachment process away from Congress, and he became the judge and jury.
An impeachment that will last.
The COVID-19 vaccine.
Do you really know about the long-term?
Did you read that thing on the internet about that?
There's a lot of talk about COVID-19 vaccines. Talk to your doctor or healthcare provider to make the decision that's right for you. Visit getvaccineanswers.org for more. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
600,000 Wisconsin families are receiving checks to help take care of their kids, thanks to the expanded child tax credit passed by Joe Biden and congressional Democrats. Ron Johnson voted against these checks for Wisconsin families, despite voting for a 2017 tax break that put more money into the pockets of millionaires like himself. It's time to vote Ron Johnson out of office. MoveOn.org political action, paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertisement. Poll.moveon.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
President Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election.
Collectively, Republicans got 1.661 million votes, 51,000 more votes than Trump got.
He exhausted his cases. He exhausted the court challenges.
All the Republicans voted for Trump the way they voted for the assembly candidacy. He would have won.
It was not rigged. It was not stolen. Donald Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election. It's really clear.
This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at p4ppc.org.
Here's today's STEM tip. Make your selfies look even better with science. Take your pics at golden hour right before the sun sets. The wavelengths made by the atmosphere create a perfect golden light for that beautiful face of yours. Learn more at Chic and STEM. A message from the Ad Council.
According to the Federalist Waller account being read into the congressional record by Ron Johnson, if this is just a small number of instigators and 100,000 true Trump-loving people, why did the Trumpsters stop the instigators? Why wouldn't you say, hey, they're not like us, let's stop those guys, instead of joining them and breaking into the U.S. Capitol?
I really believe I'd run into, even if I didn't have a weapon.
Listen to Devil's Advocates weekdays from 2 to 5 p.m.
Who's gonna teach you how to dance? Who's gonna show you how to fly? Who's gonna call you on the lame, dope smoking, slacking little sucker you are?
The Devil's Advocates, radio for the 99%.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the Thursday edition. I like to quote the Washington Post. I find this headline, opinion piece from Paul Waldman at the Washington Post, is a stunning new. Let me try that again. Is a stunning new report reveals Trump's threat to democracy. Republicans shrug. They continue to shrug. I'm going to try to get this one in. As you probably learned in high school, John Adams insisted that a republic had to be a government of laws and not of men. But as a new Senate report on President Donald Trump's efforts to enlist the Department of Justice in his attempt to overturn the 2020 election shows, the law by itself has not sufficient to prevent the coup Trump wanted to carry out. The law was an impediment, to be sure, but what we learned from the new report is this. Trump did successfully install some people within the government willing to betray the country, and everything is built on, but ultimately failed because he didn't have enough of them and ran out of time. Just needed a few more loyalists installed. More from Waldman. It is not an encouraging conclusion to reach, particularly if you consider that Trump could well run for president again in 24 and could even win. The report contains new details based on interviews with former Justice Department officials who witnessed the coup attempt. It tells how Trump allies like Rep. Scott Perry, Republican from Pennsylvania, State Senator Doug Mastrino were in regular contact with Trump in the days after the election and made their own attempts to pressure department officials. It describes how Trump pushed out a U.S. attorney in Georgia who felt he was insufficiently willing to pursue his fantastical voter fraud claims. The U.S. attorney resigned under pressure before Trump could fire him. And it describes wildly inappropriate efforts by White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to enlist the Department of Justice to convince states to nullify election results. But most shockingly is the story of Jeffrey Clark, the acting head of the department's civil division. Despite having no authority over elective law, he held meetings and conversations with the president about the election behind the back of acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen at the end of December and at the beginning of January. Things intensified when Clark presented Rosen and his deputy, Richard Donahue, with a letter that he wanted them to sign, urging state legislatures to hold special sessions for the purpose of replacing legally appointed slates of electors with new slates, with the clear implication that Trump would then be declared the winner. When Rosen was appalled and disgusted by Clark's letter, Clark's response was basically extortion. He told Rosen that Trump had suggested to him that Trump could fire Rosen and install Clark in his place. Clark said that if Rosen signed the letter, he would turn down Trump's offer and Rosen could keep his job. What a deal. It all came to a head in an extraordinary White House meeting on January 3rd with all the major players in attendance. I'll quote here. One thing we know is you, Rosen, aren't going to do anything to overturn the election, Trump said, according to Rosen's testimony. The question being discussed was whether Trump could fire Rosen and replace him with Clark, who would then begin pressuring state legislatures to overturn their election results. Here's what happened next. And Waldman uses an inset here, the reporting of others. At some point during the meeting, Donahue made clear that all of the assistant attorney generals would resign if Trump replaced Rosen with Clark. Donahue added that the mass resignations likely would not end there, and that the U.S. attorneys and other DOJ officials might also resign in mass. Not only that, White House counsel Pat Cipollone and his deputy said that they too would resign. Cipollone called Clark's letter to legislatures a murder-suicide pact. Trump backed down. So how do you defend Trump in the face of that? The Senate Judiciary Committee's Republican minority, under the direction of Senator Charles Grassley, I think I called him something other than that earlier, released a response so laughably indulgent of Trump's actions that it amounts to, Mr. Dillinger was merely trying to make a withdrawal from the bank. What is everyone getting so worked up about? The Republican response portrays Trump as little more than a concerned citizen hoping to clear up any questions about the election. Trump, they write, expressed concern with ensuring the DOJ was doing its job of fully investigating allegations of election fraud so that the American people would have confidence in the results of the 2020 election. Why, he merely wanted to make sure Americans felt good about the election. How could anyone think otherwise? And when confronted with the possibility of mass resignations that would eclipse the Saturday night massacre, President Trump listened to his advisors, including high-level DOJ officials and White House counsel, and followed their recommendations. All the reporting and investigations of Trump's coup attempt made clear that the effort to overturn the election was haphazard, ad hoc, and at times deeply stupid, yet at the same time utterly terrifying. It's a good lesson. The people who do the most damage to our country and democracy aren't necessarily brilliant supervillains. Sometimes calamity occurs because a bunch of scoundrels and fools were presented with an opportunity to do their worst. And in this case, those scoundrels and fools were stopped only because some other people managed to find an ounce or two of courage. They're not heroes. They went to work for Trump knowing full well who he was. But at that moment, they were unwilling to cooperate in a coup, and their resistance deprived it of its key element. The Judiciary Committee recommends strengthening rules that govern the relationship between the White House and the Justice Department, make another attempted coup less likely in the future. That seems like a good idea, but it's clear to the Trump administration and perhaps to future administrations, the rules didn't matter. All that leaves us with is the person of the president and the people he appoints, which makes you wonder what will protect us if Trump or someone like him became president again. Well, that's not a scary prospect. Trump 2.0, self-pardons. We wouldn't even have to, do a coup d'etat. Come back with us. More Devil's Advocates. Going to the phones next. 844-967-2789. Sharron Paul, comedian, joins me in the 4 o'clock happy hour. But your calls, they're next.
We have to bring back law and order.
I never broke the law. I am the law.
Very powerful.
Devil Radio, your fix for progressive news talk from Black Earth to Columbus. Always streaming at DARNWI.com.
Hi, this is Brad from Zero Res. If you need someone to help with your carpet cleaning, business or residence, please give us a call. We have the best system available and an amazing team of friendly technicians. Call us at 848-9000 or schedule online at zeroresmadison.com.
At Chad's Design Build, our tagline is building a better world, one remodeled home at a time. Simply stated, we want to be a part of the solution to leave the world better than we found it. That's why we've invested in a 20 kilowatt solar array, which provides over 90% of our electrical demand at our shop, office, and design studio. And that's why we invest in local causes which provide opportunities and which confront structural inequality. At Chad's Design Build, we are proud to partner with you, building a better world, one remodeled home at a time.
5 Nines, your local single source IT solutions provider, specializing in cloud technology, consulting, servers, networks, and hosting. We manage your IT so you can focus on running your business. Enjoy technology. Enjoy 5 Nines.
Coronavirus update. I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. Stocks finished higher. The Dow up 337 points. Near Chicago.
These requirements work.
President Biden is at a construction site run by Clayco, a large building firm, which is announcing a new vaccinate or test requirement for its workforce.
More people are getting vaccinated. More lives are being saved. Let's be clear. When you see headlines and reports of mass firings and hundreds of people losing their jobs, look at the bigger story.
The president says vaccine requirements work.
Not only increase in vaccination rates, but to help send people back to work.
In the coming weeks, more than 100 million Americans will be subject to vaccine requirements ordered by President Biden. If regulators give the okay, kids 5 to 11 could soon start getting coronavirus shots. Pfizer filed the request with the Food and Drug Administration. Pfizer already announced a lower dose of its vaccine worked and appeared safe in a study of young people. I'm Ed Don.
Oh, according to research, 82% of people remember radio ads. That means that 82% of you listening right now will remember that this is an ad for ZipRecruiter. If you're hiring, 82% of you will recall that ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster and easier. And 82% of you will note that you can try ZipRecruiter for free today. But you have to go to ZipRecruiter.com/free. Yes, free. 82% of you will keep in mind that ZipRecruiter's technology finds qualified people for your job and actively invites them to apply.
Is that you? Who are you talking to?
82% of you will also know that I live with my mom. But the most important thing to note is that ZipRecruiter works. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Will you be part of the 82% who remember where you can try ZipRecruiter for free? It's ZipRecruiter.com/free. Again, that exclusive link is ZipRecruiter.com/free. How much? Free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Double Radio 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM. I'm Brian Kelly with your headlines. Yesterday, former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Michael Gableman, who is leading a partisan investigation into the 2020 election, says he does not know how elections work. In an interview, Gableman said, quote, "Most people, myself included, do not have a comprehensive understanding or even any understanding of how elections work." Despite not knowing how elections work, Gableman claimed at a rally 10 months ago that elected officials allowed bureaucrats to, quote, "steal our vote." Speaker Robin Voss had originally set a deadline of October 31st for the taxpayer-funded investigation, but Gableman said that is unrealistic. Today, all-day rain, highs in the mid-60s. Tonight, lows in the mid-60s with showers overnight. And tomorrow, rain, highs in the mid-60s. You're listening to Devil Radio 92.7 FM, WTTN 1580 AM.
Kicking ass and taking names since the Wisconsin uprising. Tom and Crute are the Devil's Advocates.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the Thursday edition. The 4 o'clock happy hour is going to include a co-devil, Sharron Paul. She's a fine comedian friend of mine. Is going to join me in the next hour, but your phone calls could be next. 844-967-2789. And Fancy Brad, great news on the government's front. Apparently, they've made a debt ceiling deal to punt the ball for like 60 days. So thank goodness.
Exhale the breath I've been holding for so many hours now. I don't even know the trepidation, the anticipation, the worry. I was every day, all day. I was stop, help, please.
Well, now Republicans can just gum up the works for Christmas and blow it all up just in time for the holidays. 844-967-2789. Something to look forward to.
Well, maybe we can reverse psychology on them and officially start saying happy holidays only on purpose. And then they'll just shift their attention to the Merry Christmas thing.
844-96 party. Be like Dick from Madison. Dick, welcome back. What do you got for us?
Hey, Crute, I share your frustration with Merrick Garland. Come on, man. What does it take? Now we're learning that Trump not only had a second set of books, but you got a second set of laws for this guy. I mean, get with it. Into this clown Gableman. Oh, I don't understand elections. You know, this would be like somebody walking into the commissioner of baseball, Major League Baseball, and going, you know, I don't know anything about baseball, but I want to be the home plate umpire for the World Series. Can I do that?
Well, Leslie Nelson had that job, and I think it was the Naked Gun 2.5.
Hey, it's Enrico Palazzo.
Yeah, but the whole thing, I mean, this has just turned into a circus. They've got him, I mean, I'm watching right now in the background with the mute on, Dick Durbin again, and this stuff that he's talking about is crazy. And yet he's going to walk from this too.
You know, there were questions that this Judiciary Committee were not able to ask former DOJ officials because effectively current DOJ officials, Biden DOJ officials, objected to the line of questioning. And I've read some recent reporting on this very topic, including Durbin staff. They wanted to find out, especially in regards to the U.S. attorney in Georgia. And Trump apparently pressured the U.S. attorney to the point where he just said, I'll resign before I get fired. But Trump wanted him to investigate allegations of voter fraud. And the question that Biden's DOJ has been blocking this Senate committee from asking is effectively, what evidence of voter fraud did the Trump administration offer and what investigations were done? Now, why the Biden DOJ doesn't want that question answered, Dick, is befuddling to me. That's Merrick Garland's DOJ blocking the full and complete transparency and answers to these questions.
He, to me, he's took this job, I think, under the auspices that I'm going to sit this out until maybe a Supreme Court position comes up. He isn't fit for that either. I'm totally done with the guy.
Well, okay. I don't know if, he feels like there's some future Supreme Court position for him. But, Merrick Garland was a mob prosecutor. Merrick Garland has made a career, had a career at least, being a guy who prosecuted big cases. It's not his track record. It's not in his track record to sort of fail to show courage or fail to, let's say, prosecute the powerful. But why he's not doing so now, Dick, is beyond me.
No, this should be right in his wheelhouse. The Trump people, this is basically a crime family, in my opinion.
No, I feel like it. And, Dick, appreciate your call. Thanks for listening, brother. 844-967-2789. I am truly troubled. I don't know why this wouldn't come from Biden's Department of Justice, why this wouldn't come from Merrick Garland and the Attorney General. This is the agency with the capability and the resources, and the stamina to prosecute this against Donald Trump, because of course, any efforts to prosecute Trump will come with, lots of obstruction, lots of people defying the subpoenas and everything else. Trump told us not to give any sort of testimony. Well, that's going to take months and years to wind its way through the courts. It's going to be a difficult prosecution of Donald Trump under the best of circumstances. He's got advantages no other defendants ever had before him. And in that light, the prosecutions, to my opinion, have to come from Merrick Garland. They have to come from the Department of Justice. They have to come from the top. They can't come from the New York State prosecutor. They can't come from the Georgia State prosecutor, although, I'd be very happy about convictions in the state courts, because at least they would stand up and could not be pardoned away by Mike Pence, God forbid, should he ever become the president, or DeSantis, or whoever the next yokel is that they're going to roll out, the Trumpster, the smarter, better, more fascist Republican. Because, quite frankly, they're going to have to roll out someone fancy, Brian.
Do you think he's going to? I heard someone say today that he was going to build a huge head of steam and then just say for some weird reason he just couldn't run anymore, or just has to hand it off to the next crazy person. And
Trump?
Yeah.
I don't believe that for a moment.
Yeah, he has to win, doesn't he?
Come on, man. The guy's a narcissist. He craves the spotlight. He craves the attention. Once you've been the most powerful man in the world, it's hard to be a retired former president, especially when, there's the specter of prosecution on 3 different fronts or more.
Okay.
I think he sees this as a get out of jail free card. Trump does.
Oh yeah, clearly. But
what other incentive does he have to run?
What money and
sure.
Fame and fortune? He was a twice and vengeance. Don't forget, he's a really, really into vengeance. And by the way, what happens? So he's contesting this election right now against the Democrats because Biden won and everything. What happens if, let's say, there's a primary and he doesn't necessarily win the primary? What happens then?
Well,
how
does
that work out?
Interesting hypothetical, but I'm not sure who amongst the Republican field, be it Nikki Haley or Mike Pompeo or Mike Pence. They were all subordinates to Trump. Trump's not going to get supplanted by one of the court jesters. So while it's an interesting hypothetical, primaries are effectively, they are administered by state election boards, but it's also really an action of a private party. The Republican Party is a private party. And let's not forget, in 2016, there was a movement afoot, and Paul Manafort was brought on for free. You know, the guy that was given the polling advice to Kalimnik, that guy was brought on to help Trump navigate the coup d'etat that was going to come at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. Because there was a movement afoot, even though Trump had won the primary to oust Trump. Well, that can still happen until they basically choose their nominee at the convention. So theoretically, that could happen. But Trump's the guy with all the juice in the Republican Party. It ain't going to be Ron DeSantis, not unless, you know, Trump trips and falls and
not even
breaks his crown.
It doesn't really, short of him being completely unconscious after breaking his crown, I don't know what could possibly happen that would derail that then. You know, like, he's done so many things. He's said everything possible to have offended anybody possible, and anybody who's still with him doesn't care about any of that. They don't care about any of the criminality that has just been outlined for the last hour and a half here. They don't care. So what happens, man? What happens? Could you?
I don't care if Republicans administer a fair primary election or not. I mean, I really don't care. If they want to screw, you know, there are some that say the Democrats screwed Bernie Sanders through the use of superdelegates in the 2016.
Yeah.
Well, that was the rule of the electoral process. Bernie knew what he was signing up for, but that doesn't mean it didn't undermine the opinions of a number of people in the electorate. But ultimately, the Democrats get to set the rules for the Democrats, and the Republicans get to set the rules for the Republicans. And it could be, you know, winner take all in a state, or, you know, they could subdivide some states. They can change the rules of the primary process, and I don't care, because they're still ultimately left with their nominee. And if they want to cheat themselves, if they want to, you know, disenfranchise some portion of their electorate by screwing one of their candidates for the benefit of Trump, good. Let's see how that works out for them electorally, because we see how well that worked out to those that perceived Hillary had somehow screwed Bernie through the superdelegates. We see how that worked out for the country and how it worked out in the state of Wisconsin. Hillary Clinton did not win the general election despite winning the primary, right? She had the support of the superdelegates, but a lot of the Bernie backers, and it wasn't me, I voted for Hillary, but a lot of the Bernie backers that felt like it was a rigged election, quote unquote, well, they voted for Jill Stein. And some even turned into Trump
Some
voters.
of them turned to Trumpers. I talked to a bunch of those guys in Milwaukee. Weird.
I want to throw this out there, and I strongly agree, at least with the headline of this opinion piece. This first published at the DC Report. Terry Schwandren, Senate report confirms again Trump needs to explain himself under oath. Yes, there was a little surprise in the disclosures this week as the Senate Judiciary Committee Majority Staff report detailing what amounts to a plot by Donald Trump to overthrow last November's election. It was neither surprising that Trump would break federal law and ethical standards to stay in office, nor that his own Justice Department office would threaten to resign en masse if Trump named Jeffrey Clark, a big lie loyalist, as Attorney General to stop the Electoral College results from being confirmed by Congress. Nor was it surprising that the Democratic appointed staff investigators would uncover important details of what amounts to an attempted coup by Trump. Indeed, few media reports noted that it was assembled and written by the majority staff rather than by the committee as a whole, which would have meant that the Republican members had signed on to the fact-finding as well. This was a release of an 8-month investigation by Democrats alone. Republicans issued a separate report, which basically insists that in the end, Trump followed what his advisors told him to do. It was all Mark Meadows' fault. But it's still criminal. There still should be some culpability, but I read on. The Judiciary Committee interviewed former acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen, former acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue, former U.S. Attorney BJ Pack, and emails and written materials that show involvement of Republican members of Congress in the plot. We've talked about that as well. But it is as if Republicans heard different interviews than their counterparts, offering kind of a gold leaf shield of partisan hyperbole that comes as close to coup planning as possible. And there was ample evidence. The detail of the reports are out and appeared not only well-researched, but are attached for the public as actual evidence. The report, non-subtly entitled Subverting Justice, How the Former President and His Allies Pressured DOJ to Overturn the 2020 Election. Yeah, that sounds like a page turner. Details that circumstances leading to the January 3rd White House meeting in which the plan to replace Rosen with loyalist Clark was discussed. Wish you had this article, Brian. Got the Monday mouse on a Thursday. We'll take some calls here in a moment, but a little bit more. The New York Times summarized the top leaders of the Justice Department, warned that they and other senior officials would resign in mass if he followed through. They received immediate support from Patrick Cipollone, the White House counsel, and his top deputy, Patrick Philbin. Cipollone argued the plot was a murder-suicide pact. One participant recalled, only near the end of the nearly 3-hour meeting did Mr. Trump relent and agree to drop his threat. Another section takes on the attempts to overturn election results in Georgia, where Trump arranged for dismissal of PAC for not jumping to pursue non-existent fraud. Officially, this Judiciary Committee document is an interim report since the panel is awaiting action by the National Archives to furnish document, calendar appointments, and communications involving the White House efforts to subvert the election. The request was made in the spring. The committee is also waiting to see whether Jeffrey Clark, who has been a lower-rung justice lawyer, will sit for an interview and help provide missing details about what was happening inside the White House. Don't count on it. The committee has also asked the District of Columbia Bar, which licenses and disciplines attorneys, to open a disciplinary investigation into Clark based on its findings. Yeah, he's guilty. Criminally culpable, I suspect. He's not going to testify. He's going to lawyer up if he's smart. Come back. He is a lawyer. More devil's advocates. I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on the radio. 844-967-2789.
It's Enrico Palazzo!
And don't call me Shirley.
Hey, Wisconsin, this is Kirk Bankstad, and I own the Minocqua Brewing Company. Usually, I promote my progressive beer on this station, but today I wanted to promote these guys at Devil Radio. Devil Radio is the only progressive talk station in the state, and there are no less than 81 conservative talk stations in Wisconsin that spew crazy Trump cult rhetoric. While the Republicans have big pockets to fund these stations and manipulate Wisconsinites to vote against their own interests, Democrats have to rely on grassroots donations to get their message out. So I'm asking you to donate some money to these guys and keep them on the air. And I'm asking you to do it in September because every dollar you donate this month will be matched by an anonymous donor that cares about making Wisconsin a democracy again and knows that this radio station helps with that mission. So please donate today at devilradio927.com at the Support Devil Radio tab. Again, send some big bucks to devilradio927.com at the Support Devil Radio tab.
600,000 Wisconsin families are receiving checks to help take care of their kids thanks to the expanded child tax credit passed by Joe Biden and congressional Democrats. Ron Johnson voted against these checks for Wisconsin families, despite voting for a 2017 tax break that put more money into the pockets of millionaires like himself. It's time to vote Ron Johnson out of office. MoveOn.org political action, paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising. Poll.moveon.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Our friend Scott Ross.
Johnson's going to have this hearing next week. The way in which he has misused and abused his office in order to try and further these crackpot theories he had 2 anti-vaxxer hearings. I don't understand what the point of that is. It's one thing to be like, all right, if you're a Republican, you're like, I'll just try and forget that Trump said we might be able to inject ourselves with bleach to solve this COVID problem. But why would you so revel in your own crapulence that you would actually have several hearings in the United States Senate?
Listen to Devil's Advocates live weekdays from 2 to 5 p.m.
The Devil's Advocates, the fix for political junkies everywhere.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Forbes issuing new reports on Donald Trump today. Forbes, the financial magazine, they say Donald Trump has more than $730 million in debt to pay in the next 3 years, including a $100 million loan on the Trump Tower due in September, $285 million due in November of 22. And Trump owns 30% share of a debt in a New York skyscraper. In 23 and 24, Trump will own additional $353 million on various properties, which could be a significant financial burden should he choose to mount another White House bid.
And nobody knows more about debt than I do.
You know, the man fell off the Forbes 500 list for the first time in like 25 years.
Oh, I just,
Forbes 400.
You mean the one that he lied to get on? Yeah. Okay.
Does that mean he's not a billionaire anymore?
He never was.
844-967-2789. Want to hear from you? Got to find Code Devil joining me in the 4 o'clock happy hour. Comedian Sharron Paul. Stick around for her, but your calls are next. Starting with you, Joe from Madison. Welcome, Joe. What do you got for us?
Well, I share your outrage, and I believe that part of what is so burning about this whole situation with Trump and his associates dancing around without any consequence is just that there seems to be no consequence. And elected officials there's no consequence for their acts of sedition, acts of corruption, acts of obstruction. I mean, they'll just do it again. Why wouldn't you? Any child that isn't set to right for doing something wrong would act in the same way. And it's gotten to the point where it's so blatant, it's so in your face. I mean, obviously Trump is a huge example of it, but I find the situation with Gableman to be equally enraging. A man who was elected to be a judge in Burnett County and was elected to the Supreme Court of Wisconsin claims to not understand how elections work. We're supposed to
Joe,
buy that.
he understands how to corrupt an election because Michael Gableman, the corrupted former Wisconsin Supreme Court justice, ran one of the most corrupt races of all time. And the only reason he wasn't brought up on ethics charges is because the only one that could rule on him as a Supreme Court justice was the Wisconsin Supreme Court. I mean, he was up to his eyeballs from the day he got elected.
Yeah, it's as though our home state is kind of a mini version of what's happening on the national level.
I think we preceded, don't you? We foreshadowed the malfeasance and the evil to come, Joe.
We've led the pack. It's really an honor, the fact that we are the first and the foremost to make our way into corruption and bad dealings. But I think it is the fact that there is no consequence, that seems to be seemingly no consequence, that is so galling. And boy, the insidiousness of that is a pretty bile-inducing thing for our country. And I share your outrage, Crudy. I just wanted to say I share it.
Well, Joe, I appreciate it. I've been outraged since Scott Walker was elected governor of the state of Wisconsin. And his office was raided the day he was elected governor of the state of Wisconsin. And there were criminal charges all around him. And Scott Walker was surrounded by criminality. He was perpetrating criminality, at least in terms of breaking campaign finance laws that existed when he was elected governor and reelected governor. And for his malfeasance, and to a degree for his Act 10, attacking public sector unions. Well, Scott Walker was recalled in the state of Wisconsin. He was the first governor ever to survive a recall. I guess him and Newsom have that in common now. But it made him somehow the Teflon Don of local governance. And Scott Walker never paid a price for his criminality. In fact, he got rid of the referees, got rid of the John Doe investigatory body, raised the contribution caps, and basically made it such a joke. The only way you could be perceived to coordinate with third-party groups, which was in part, the criminality Scott Walker was perpetrating, is if the groups asked you, can we coordinate with you? No? Okay, we'll just keep doing it then in what is a loophole legal way. I mean, it's the wild, wild west under campaign finance laws. And that very corrupted former governor of the state of Wisconsin came before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And guys like Gableman were the beneficiaries of millions of dollars from the very same people that were coordinating with Scott Walker. So these oversized business groups like Wisconsin Manufacturers of Commerce and Wisconsin's realtors were giving money to third-party groups that then were buying ads to support Scott Walker. And when Scott Walker was held to accountability by the former Government Accountability Board, a bunch of retired judges, nonpartisans, held up as the benchmark for good governance in the nation. Well, when they had the temerity to go investigate Scott Walker's criminality, he just eliminated the referees. And Republicans here in the state of Wisconsin, they like the power. They like having all the controlling power. And that's what I think we saw sort of foreshadowed in the Trump presidency. Yeah, Scott Walker is bland. He doesn't have the charisma of a Donald Trump, but he has the same ill intent. He had the same, quest for power. And once he had power, Republicans were more than willing to wield power. And just because it had never been done before, just because no one ever tried to remove the Wisconsin idea from the Wisconsin Constitution, that didn't mean Scott Walker wasn't going to endeavor to do that. I mean, just because no one tried it before doesn't mean a Republican shouldn't try it. Just because there are societal and governmental norms, Fancy Brian, doesn't mean that they weren't made to be broken.
Well, in Gableman and Walker's defense, they didn't know how elections work, so they didn't know they were, completely violating campaign finance.
Did Gableman know, as a Supreme Court justice who was the recipient of a couple $1 million from litigants before the court, did he know that might smack of conflict and perhaps he should recuse himself?
How can he possibly have all the time to learn how elections work? He's busy trying to get elected.
He was unelectable as a Supreme Court justice. They served 10-year terms here in Wisconsin. But Gableman was unelectable after 10 years on the court. He was swept into power on a corrupt campaign. And 10 years later, he was untouchable. He was so corrupt. Even Republicans would have a hard time supporting the guy. And now he's out there supporting the big lie. Immediately after the election, Michael Gableman, this corrupted former Supreme Court justice, was crying foul, crying rigged elections. And he seemed like the perfect candidate. This guy that came out and publicly admitted he doesn't understand the nature of elections, doesn't really get it, even though he wasn't elected. And, even though, he ruled on campaign finance laws in the state of Wisconsin. And even though he knows the integrity of the elections in the state of Wisconsin have been proven over and over again. They're beyond reproach. We have this unique system, 1,850 decentralized election divisions. You'd have to have such a massive conspiracy to pull it off in the state of Wisconsin. It's ridiculous. But of course, ridiculous, that doesn't stop Republicans. They just tell their listeners, their constituents, their voters, what you see here, don't believe your lying eyes. Believe us. Only we can fix it. And by fix it, I mean elections. Come back. More of the Devil's Advocates radio show. Find Co-Devil for the 4:00 happy hour. Comedian Sharron Paul. She's next. You stick around.
Nobody did what I've done.
9 times.
They'll know what you did.
9.
We're putting the band back together.
Sexy Liberal is in person again, this time in Madison.
Okay, fine. Madison it is.
At the Barrymore Theater, October 23rd. All 4 cast members will be on stage performing together.
But going into Wisconsin.
Stephanie Miller.
Can I just go with bunker bitch? How many times did you actually shit your diaper in your little bunker?
John Fugelsang.
What a pleasure it is to be in a room full of so many atheists doing the Lord's work.
Comedy duo Frangela.
Y'all are some sexy liberals.
Yes. And Hal Sparks.
I got kicked out of the South for thinking too much.
All live and in person at the Barrymore Theater in Madison on October 23rd. But if you can't get to Wisconsin in October, the show will also be simulcast live via pay-per-view on Meathook. Come see the show live or stay at home and watch in the comfort of your living room. A limited number of post-show meet and grope tickets will be available at the Barrymore show. And please, all attendees need to be vaccinated to attend the live show. October 23rd at the Barrymore in Madison. Sexy Liberal return.
You are listening to WTTN 1580 AM Columbus and W224 EG 92.7 FM Madison, always streaming on the Devil Radio app.
AP News. I'm Ed Donahue. President Biden is near Chicago talking about vaccine mandates.
These requirements work.
It's an effort to force the roughly 67 million unvaccinated American adults to roll up their sleeves. The president was at a construction site run by a company announcing a new vaccinate or test requirement for its workforce.
I know the vaccination requirements are tough medicine. Unpopular with some, politics for others, but they're life-saving. They're game-changing for our country.
The president says this isn't about politics, it's about life and death. Pfizer has filed paperwork to the government for approval of its coronavirus vaccine for kids 5 to 11. Here's the AP's Sagar Magani.
If the FDA and then the CDC sign off, roughly 28 million kids in that age group could start getting shots within weeks in what would be a major expansion of the vaccination drive amid an alarming rise in virus cases among children. Pfizer says they should get a third of the dose now given to those 12 and older.
A weather system is stalled over Alabama, dropping lots of rain. Flash flood warnings are in effect. 4 people have died. Jill Caskey was rescued from her car in Pelham, Alabama.
I called 911. Water was coming in the car so fast that I had to bail out the window.
82 people were rescued in Pelham. Some former NBA players are accused of defrauding the league's health and welfare benefit plan.
The 19 charged defendants submitted approximately $3.9 million in false claims.
U.S. Attorney Audrey Strauss says the plan is funded primarily by NBA teams. The governor of Utah says President Biden will expand 2 national monuments that were downsized during the Trump administration. Stocks finished higher, the Dow up 337 points. This is AP News.
According to research, 82% of people remember radio ads. That means that 82% of you listening right now will remember that this is an ad for ZipRecruiter. If you're hiring, 82% of you will recall that ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster and easier. And 82% of you will note that you can try ZipRecruiter for free today. But you have to go to ZipRecruiter.com/free. Yes, free. 82% of you will keep in mind that ZipRecruiter's technology finds qualified people for your job and actively invites them to apply.
Is that you? Who are you talking to?
82% of you will also know that I live with my mom. But the most important thing to note is that ZipRecruiter works. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Will you be part of the 82% who remember where you can try ZipRecruiter for free? It's ZipRecruiter.com/free. Again, that exclusive link is ZipRecruiter.com/free. How much? Free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
President Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election.
Collectively, Republicans got 1.661 million votes, 51,000 more votes than Trump got.
He exhausted his cases. He exhausted the court challenges.
All the Republicans voted for Trump the way they voted for the assembly candidates. He would have won.
It was not rigged. It was not stolen. Donald Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election. It's really clear.
This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at p4ppc.org.
So, Darcy Haber, I hear you have solar panels on your office building. Are all real estate brokers tree huggers?
Crew, you should know that at Solidarity Realty, we provide outstanding real estate service while adhering to our core progressive values. Environmental sustainability is a big part of that.
So you really walk your talk, huh?
Yep, I even walk to work.
Come on, always?
Well, sometimes I bike. And if I have an appointment across town, I use my hybrid.
Solidarity Realty. They're real, they're solid, and they're honest. Find them online at solidarityrealty.com. There is an alternative.
Welcome to Jeopardy! Aaron has the night off. Jimmy?
I'll take local music for 1,000, Rob.
This local band is celebrating 25 years in November.
Who is VO5?
Oh, Jimmy, no. Rocker?
Who is Fat Function?
That's correct. This local band is playing Funk's Pub on October 30th for the Devil Radio Halloween weekend.
Who is my new band, Rob? Iron Plow. How does he know all this stuff?
By listening to Max Inc. Radio, Jimmy, every Saturday from 6 p.m. to midnight.
I'm downloading the Devil Radio app right now.
Hey, Dom, is your carpeting starting to have a little bit of a funk to it?
That's a bit of a personal question, Crudy.
No, I know this is really busy time for one of our sponsors, Zero Res of Madison. People want a cleaner, healthier home.
You mean spending the entire quarantine locked in with bacteria and allergens isn't healthy? Who knew?
You want to get it professionally cleaned well before it gets funky. Even if you vacuum frequently,
I vacuum a lot.
You still need to get it professionally cleaned. Schedule your carpet cleaning online at zeroresmadison.com. Tell them the Devil's Advocate sent you.
For Double Radio 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM, I'm Brian Kelly with your headlines. Wisconsin's DPI superintendent wants the legislature to stay out of public construction. In an interview with WSAW, Superintendent Jill Underly said, quote, "When you look at the way we finance schools, that has become incredibly partisan. We need to take the emotion out of things. We need to stop micromanaging our local school boards. We need to stop micromanaging our schools. And for that matter, where we're at with DPI, we also want the legislature to stop micromanaging us too. We have certain things we're supposed to do for all schools in the state, and we'd like to do our jobs." End quote. In recent weeks, Wisconsin Republicans have proposed limitations on what can be taught in schools, centering around critical race theory, as well as a proposal to eliminate the office of superintendent altogether. You're listening to Double Radio 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM.
Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever. And due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening. Now live from the heart of liberal Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning. Welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Best friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Now here are your hosts, Dom and Crute.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. We are now sliding into the 4 o'clock happier Thursday happy hour. And I'm happy to announce I'll very soon be joined by a very fine guest. She is comedian Sharron Paul. And Sharron, we met her at I guess I met her at Madison. She was at the Barrymore Theater. She came as part of Liz Winstead's group, Lady Parts Justice. And they came to town about the same time Stephanie Miller came to town. It's been a couple of years since Stephanie Miller came to town. But if you hadn't noticed, she's coming back October 23rd to the Barrymore Theater, talking about Stephanie Miller. Very excited to host her. Devil Radio, kind of our reputation on display now. We have to show up on behalf of Stephanie Miller. I'm looking for a theater full of people, Fancy Brian.
We need to have everybody there for the Sexy Liberal Tour. It's sexiness, it's liberalness, and there's going to be a whole bunch of people there. They're going to have the whole band back together. There's going to be about 4 of them together. I think John Fugelsang is going to enjoy us. He's one of my favorites. I love John Fugelsang because he's funny about things, but he also gives a crap enough to go and make a point and not just, make a fart joke. Although the fart jokes are fantastic.
We're going to have Sharron join us. I was hoping she would Zoom in, but I'm going to have her join us right now live via phone. Sharron Paul, welcome back to the Devil's Advocates. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm sad we had a little bit of a technical difficulty there.
I blame Facebook. It's Zuckerberg's fault in some way, shape, or form. Now, Sharron, you are a comedian, but you got a day job too, and you've gone through a few changes since I first met you back in Liz Winstead's Lady Part Justice tour when you came to Madison, and we partied with you at the RNC. And subsequently, Sharron, you've been married and gotten a real day job. Are you allowed to tell people where you work?
Well, I'm not married. I'm engaged. I'm getting married.
Oh, my bad.
Year.
Well, I'm still waiting for my invitation to the wedding. My bad.
Yeah, you're just a little early. That's all. I work for the New York State government. I'll put it that way.
In the judicial system. Sharron.
Correct.
Let's talk about a judicial ruling overnight, Texas abortion law. And I was truly troubled, and I'll get your opinion here in a second, but Sharron, I was truly troubled that the U.S. Supreme Court allowed this thing to go forward, because a 6-week heartbeat abortion ban clearly is in contrast to what was decided in Roe v. Wade. So let's start with the Texas law. How troubled were you that this Supreme Court allowed it to go forward?
Oh, it was wildly disturbing. Like, this has literally been the nightmare we've been having for years, where people kept telling us, oh, there's no way that Roe will ever be threatened, where we saw this coming from miles away. It's so disheartening and enraging.
And where do you think we stand on Roe? Obviously, there's a Mississippi case, and in the very shortest of run, did you see the ruling on the Texas law overnight? The federal court basically said, I can't in good conscience allow this to stand. Did you see that, Sharron? And what was your impression of the judicial ruling on the current Texas law?
Well, I'm glad that ruling came through, but it's really upsetting that it had to even come to that. Like, we shouldn't be here in the first place. It shouldn't need to have been decided, because the 6-week ruling shouldn't have gone through initially.
Yes,
like,
ma'am.
It's a major challenge to Wade.
And Sharron, what about the Mississippi law that will come before the court? My understanding, I'm not clear if they've already heard oral arguments or if it's just part of this session, but there will be a ruling in the spring. And with this new 6-3 dichotomy in this conservative controlled court, how concerned are you that they're going to codify this Mississippi law, a 15-week abortion ban?
I'm genuinely worried about it, because just the numbers aren't in our favor as progressives.
You mean on the court, Sharron?
On the courts, yes, in the Supreme Court. Like, it's just, as far as a numbers game is concerned, I'm personally hopeful, but with reservations.
But when you talk about a numbers game, shouldn't the opinion of the American people factor in? I mean, when I look at polling, big, small, all across the country, Sharron, the American people think that Roe v. Wade is decided law. And there is certainly a percentage of single issue anti-abortion voters. But the vast majority of even Republicans think that Roe v. Wade is decided law. And at minimum, even if they believe in some sort of abortive bans, they believe there should be carve-outs and exceptions. Well, the Texas law doesn't even offer carve-out or exceptions for rape or incest. It seems like the nature of these laws are getting harsher and harsher, like they're trying to out-conservative each other, Sharron.
Oh, they are. They're playing a game of extremes. They're just like, how much worse can we make that? Watch me top this. It's very, very cruel.
And who is it? Just the GOP base? I mean, are they just playing to the base? I can't believe that electorally conservatives, be it Abbott in Texas or federal conservatives, I can't believe that they think that overturning Roe v. Wade is good policy and will be supported by the American people, because that's not what the polling tells us, Sharron. And while I know that this has been a forever kind of wedge issue, it's been something Republicans have raised money on and always had the specter of overturning abortion. Well, sometimes you got to be careful what you wish for. I mean, if they are successful at this, what do you think the electoral consequence might be?
Oh, I genuinely don't know, because like you said, there are plenty of single issue voters that are like anti-abortion extremists. I don't know that they have the numbers in their favor to keep it rolling. But on the flip side of that, there are hard and fast Republicans who, though they might not agree with that one issue, they're still going to stick to party lines and be fine with it, which is really scary to me. And like you said, the American people, we do acknowledge broadly that it is the law of the land, though there are the loudest voices are the ones who are bringing the challenges. Sure. And they think that these are the same people who think that, the last election wasn't legitimate.
Well, and they're probably the same people that are anti-vax and anti-mask, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. I got to find Code Devil. She is Sharron Paul. I know her as a comedian. She's got a day job too, but I know you as a funny person. Sharron, I like to take sort of my own clever, snarky, funny take on the day's headlines. How funny are you able to be about issues that are near and dear as reproductive rights? How do you convert this into material for the show?
I mean, you got to take it as it comes. It's more of a matter, I think, of you got to laugh to keep from crying and just fully take advantage of the absurd.
Sharron, speaking of the absurd, I know you've been at work today, but there is a new Senate report out about Donald Trump's efforts, 9 sort of specific efforts to influence the Department of Justice and to overturn the outcome of the last election. Now, I'm a little outraged, Sharron. I got to tell you, coup d'etats kind of, they're a burr under my saddle, let's just say. But I've got to ask you, do the American people, are they cognizant of this? Are there too many Republicans? Are there too many people that voted for Biden and turned off? Why are the American people not outraged? Why are they not clamoring for the prosecution of the former?
I think the American people are genuinely exhausted and overwhelmed by news and absurdity. Like, I think it's been a constant barrage of insane news that just keeps topping itself day after day, sometimes hour by hour. And so it's like our attention is just split.
Sharron, do you feel like that was after Barack Obama got elected? And obviously, he had sort of an open-ended hope and change agenda. And people elected Barack Obama. And I would say many on the left were guilty of electing the man and then kind of letting him off the hook. Just saying, we elected you, you go govern. We're going to stick our heads in the sand and, we'll pop up occasionally. But do you think the American people, and I get the whole notion, the Trump presidency was difficult on everyone, even the Republicans, they had a hard time defending his ass. But if we allow ourselves to be disengaged, don't we face the specter of the rise again of Donald Trump? I mean, I'm going to go see the man in Iowa this weekend. I think he's running for president again, Sharron. And even though he's not on Twitter, I think he's out there. He's like the great white shark. It just swam out a little bit. It's coming back to eat the swimmers on the shore.
Yeah, absolutely. Just thinking of him, the Jaws music is playing in my head as we speak. He's going to find ways to be relevant with those he needs to be relevant with. And like you said, you're going to go see him. He's going to have these rallies and he's going to rile up his base, who are probably still salty about him no longer being on Twitter because he brought, oddly enough, great joy to certain demographics. Even if that joy was via vitriol for the rest of us.
It was the joy of the liberal tears. And Sharron, while we might think it's far-fetched to think that Donald Trump could ever get reelected, I mean, God, he has a track record. I know he got elected the first time, sort of, eyed the needle, if you will, through the Electoral College. But Sharron, all I have to do to realize that this is a real possibility is look at the movie Jaws. The mayor of Jaws, he's still the mayor in Jaws too. He got reelected. The same guy that put the entire town in danger got reelected. Sharron Paul, I tell you, man, plausibly, Donald Trump could get reelected. Come back. Sharron Paul, fine comedian, friend of ours. She is my co-devil for the hour. More Devil's Advocates on the other side. We'll be right back.
Get on out of here. But I've been in the right place, but it must have been the wrong time.
You think he's gone? He's not gone. That's the whole point. He's never gone.
You are going to ignore this particular problem until it swims up and bites you on the ass.
You see?
We're putting the band back together.
Sexy Liberal is in person again, this time in Madison.
Okay, fine. Madison it is.
At the Barrymore Theater, October 23rd. All 4 cast members will be on stage performing together.
I'm going into Wisconsin.
Stephanie Miller.
Can I just go with bunker bitch? How many times did you actually put your diaper in your little bunker?
John Fugelsang.
What a pleasure it is to be in a room full of so many atheists doing the Lord's work.
Comedy duo Frangela.
Y'all are some sexy liberals. Yes.
And Hal Sparks.
I got kicked out of the South for thinking too much.
All live and in person at the Barrymore Theater in Madison on October 23rd. But if you can't get to Wisconsin in October, the show will also be simulcast live via pay-per-view on Meathook. Come see the show live or stay at home and watch in the comfort of your living room. A limited number of post-show meet and grope tickets will be available at the Barrymore show. And please, all attendees need to be vaccinated to attend the live show. October 23rd at the Barrymore in Madison. Sexy Liberal return.
This is Chad Spate. Are you thinking about improving or expanding your home? At Chad's Design Build, we're committed to making your home comfortable, healthy, attractive, durable, and sustainable. In fact, those commitments spell our name. And we deliver these services with our outstanding team of professionals who will respect you and your home. Visit our website at chadsdesignbuild.com to learn more about how we are building a better world, one remodeled home at a time.
At Knuckleheads, our knowledgeable staff knows the ins and outs of CBD.
Hello, Sharron.
Whether you're a veteran of cannabis like the Double Radio team or first time,
Yeah.
the Knuckleheads team has the information to answer all your CBD questions.
Joyous.
Never heard of a tincture? We got you covered. Looking for something to address those achy joints? We got just.
All right, we got about 20 seconds.
Stop into our new location at 520
We're sitting in a
State
courtroom right now.
Double Radio to our knowledgeable staff to get 15% off your order today. Knuckleheads, your one-stop shop for CBD in Madison.
You've merely made radio your ally. I was born on the radio. Devil Radio, 92.7.
This song's called How High. We are the record company. We play rock and roll.
The Devil's Advocates, because it's always 420 somewhere.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show, the 420 break. We're recently back from it. We got a fine guest. She is my co-devil for the hour, comedian Sharron Paul, lives in New York State, works for the state. We won't say where. Sharron, you guys got legalized weed in New York State. When can you start going to the dispensaries?
You know what? Honestly, I'm not sure because like smoking and possession have been decriminalized. It's not fully legal here just yet. So like we don't have dispensaries or anything open to the public yet. I've been hearing things about within the next year or so. So,
well, I'm going to start planning a trip. You know, I'm a marijuana tourist, if you will. I've traveled all around the country because I live in Mississippi here, Sharron, and we got Republicans. We're surrounded by legalized states, and you know, we're governed by backward thinking Republicans here.
How long is your shortest trip for?
45 minutes.
Okay, that's not awful. That's like going home from work. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't deal with the Big Apple traffic, but 45 minutes I can get to the state line and 45 minutes back. So it's, you know, like a 90-minute round trip, but well worth it. Sharron Paul, my fine co-devil for the day. Sharron, the newest Senate report, you know, I feel shocked, but I shouldn't be shocked. I knew a lot of this information was already in the public purview. And the fact that the former president, Donald Trump, has not yet been criminally charged by the Department of Justice, when the very people he was pressuring were senior level officials at the Department of Justice, the acting attorney general. I mean, if they're not credible witnesses for the indictment, Sharron, who would be? When will we see indictments, do you think?
I would genuinely hope sooner rather than later, but it scares me that the entire 4 years he was in office and even hereafter, it feels like he just has dirt on everyone and everyone's afraid to do anything to actually bring him down. Like, I feel like he's a mean girl that just knows everyone's deep, dark secrets and no one wants to be outed for whatever their dirt is. And they just won't go for the attack. And I can't understand it.
Well, I hadn't heard the mean girl analogy prior, but Sharron, don't you think the Department of Justice, the United States Department of Justice, I mean, they got the lawyers, they've got the resources, they are best prepared to deal with this complex legal entanglement, which would be the prosecution of a former president. Now, I know that the New York State prosecutors are considering indictment, certainly have indicted through the Trump org. And we would think that somewhere in Georgia, they're doing some investigatory work regarding him trying to overturn the election in Georgia, talking about Trump. But I worry for these state level prosecutors. I mean, in New York, it's an elected position. I think Cyrus Vance he's out at the end of the year, and somebody else has got to pick up the baton and carry the prosecution. I'm less hopeful of that. And Fulton County, a county level DA in Georgia is going to take on the former president in a prosecutorial fashion. I mean, that's a heavy lift.
Beyond overwhelming. That seems so overwhelming for that. Like you said, Cy Vance is out sooner than so soon. Before you know it, that dude is going to be gone. And then, the prosecutor in Georgia, this seems outside of the scope of anything they've had to deal with previously. This is outside the scope of what most prosecutors have ever had to deal with. Like, former presidents aren't usually this messy. Granted, there are exceptions to the rule. We haven't seen this level of messiness almost ever. I mean, definitively not in my lifetime. I'll put it that way.
Well, January 6th, it got real messy at the U.S. Capitol. And we know that, and Dick Durbin, he's on the Judiciary Committee, Democrat from Illinois. Durbin kind of laid out this 3-step coup. And it started with the lawsuits. And they, of course, were meritless and were roundly dismissed, 60 plus lawsuits. And then it came to the pressuring of the DOJ and the pressuring of specific elections officials in Georgia. And then came the January 6th, the mob. The mob tried to overturn the Electoral College results. And we now have a congressional-led subcommittee or a committee doing the investigation. They're issuing subpoenas. They're doing their level best, Sharron. But the problem is, of course, Trump's former aides are being instructed by their former boss, well, just ignore the subpoenas. Don't respond. Don't send the paperwork. Don't send anything. Stonewall. And you and I, we would never get away from stonewalling a congressional subpoena.
Oh, no. They would have locked us up like day 2. We would have been done for.
But Sharron, of course, they all at least have the plausible defense that, well, executive action's got to be explored through the courts. And I feel like our nation and the guardrails that we have, the whole presidents that try to entertain a coup d'etat against their successors, I don't know that we have sufficient guardrails. What do we do? What would you do? Sharron, you rule the world. What would you do? I can give you like a data rule. What are you going to do?
A data rule to take down the folks that I would say caused January 6th and enacted January 6th. Say round them up, lock them up. That's how I feel about them personally. There's gotta be a way to, I want to say, process this faster. Like, I know the rigmarole of indicting folks. It's not the quickest thing. It's not the easiest thing, but it's very possible, especially for the judicial system who does this day in, day out. And then there's just new evidence every single day showing us exactly what these people planned. There was real-time video. We saw exactly what they did. I don't know what the holdup could possibly be.
I've been a defendant in the courts of law, and with a lot less evidence, I've had to plead guilty before, Sharron, because, when you're guilty, you're guilty. And when they got videotape of it, it makes it a little hard. That plausible deniability kind of gets thrown out the window. Well, we've had over 600 insurrectionists, terrorists, domestic terrorists, I would describe them as, but the DOJ can only prosecute the low-level offenders. Come back, Sharron Paul, my fine co-devil for the hour, comedian, friend of mine, more devil's advocates.
Talk it up, man.
Lifeless eyes, black eyes, like a doll's eye.
Kind of grabs you by the boo-boo, don't it?
This is the radio station you were looking for. Devil Radio 92.7. It surrounds us. It penetrates us. It binds the world together.
Help me, Devil Radio. You're my only hope.
Hey, it's Chris and Brian here from the On the Bus podcast. Be sure to check out new episodes on devilradio927.com.
We interview people like Wisconsin native and lead singer for the record company, Chris Voss.
I said about the record company when they asked, somebody else asked me, when did you know? And I said, you don't ever really know. I said, picture yourself accelerating, and this is your life. You're accelerating towards, you're going over a hill, and there's a canyon, and there's a big cliff, and you see it, and you know the only way that you're going to get there is you got to keep your foot on the gas. You do, and you pray that there's a bridge on the other side of the hill. That's what it's like being a musician or carrying any dream. And that's not a complaint. It's just a flat out reality.
Podcasts drop every other Tuesday on devilradio927.com.
No yelling on the bus. Biden vaccines. I'm Tim McGuire with an AP News Minute. President Biden, during a visit to a Chicago suburb, admits he didn't push vaccine mandates when he first took office.
While I didn't race to do it right away, that's why I've had to move toward requirements that everyone get vaccinated, where I had the authority to do that. That wasn't my first instinct.
The president says roughly 67 million unvaccinated adults in this country must get the shots to overcome the pandemic. 4 people are dead in flash flooding caused by more than a foot of rain from a stalled weather system over the southeast. Jill Caskey had to climb out of the window of her flooded car in a parking lot in Pelham, Alabama, a suburb of Birmingham.
Water was coming in the car so fast that I had to bail out the window. And then as I started across this parking lot, a police officer met me halfway and got me to Highway 31 where my husband picked me up.
I'm Tim McGuire.
Oh, according to research, 82% of people remember radio ads. That means that 82% of you listening right now will remember that this is an ad for ZipRecruiter. If you're hiring, 82% of you will recall that ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster and easier. And 82% of you will note that you can try ZipRecruiter for free today. But you have to go to ZipRecruiter.com/free. Yes, free. 82% of you will keep in mind that ZipRecruiter's technology finds qualified people for your job and actively invites them to apply.
Is that you? Who are you talking to?
82% of you will also know that I live with my mom. But the most important thing to note is that ZipRecruiter works. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Will you be part of the 82% who remember where you can try ZipRecruiter for free? It's ZipRecruiter.com/free. Again, that exclusive link is ZipRecruiter.com/free. How much? Free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Double Radio 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM. I'm Brian Kelly with your headlines. Yesterday, former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Michael Gableman, who is leading a partisan investigation into the 2020 election, says he does not know how elections work. In an interview, Gableman said, quote, "Most people, myself included, do not have a comprehensive understanding or even any understanding of how elections work." Despite not knowing how elections work, Gableman claimed at a rally 10 months ago that elected officials allowed bureaucrats to, quote, "steal our vote." Speaker Robin Voss had originally set a deadline of October 31st for the taxpayer-funded investigation, but Gableman said that is unrealistic. Today, all-day rain, highs in the mid-60s. Tonight, lows in the mid-60s with showers overnight. And tomorrow, rain, highs in the mid-60s. You're listening to Devil Radio 92.7 FM, WTTN 1580 AM.
Everybody's got a thing, but some don't know how to handle it.
The Devil's Advocates, because freedom.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the 4 o'clock happy hour. It rolls on with the fine code devil. She is Sharron Paul, comedian, friend of mine. Sharron, thank you for joining me. New York State, New York City. Are you in the city?
I'm in New York City, yes.
So let me ask you, let me get your reaction. Has the hullabaloo over Governor Cuomo blown over yet in New York?
You know, I feel like it was a big, huge deal in the moment. And like I said, people get so overwhelmed by news and nonsense that it kind of has. I feel like there's very little talk locally about the new governor. Like I don't hear anyone talk about her almost at all. But the thing is, I feel like we stopped talking about Governor Cuomo because then there was controversy about Chris Cuomo. So that kind of took over the narrative about the Cuomo family.
Now, what about the former governor of New York State, Cuomo? Obviously, he was something of a legacy. The old man had a similar job, but I thought he was well regarded, at least in regards to the COVID response. As a citizen of New York, those had to be scary days, and probably still are, Sharron. So what about his response? He seemed like a sort of a level-headed guy, certainly a contrast to Trump at the time. Were the people of New York, quote unquote, fooled? Did they see this as strong leadership and the bad news was yet to come? Because I had friends in New York telling me, we don't like this guy. This guy's a bully. What was your impression? What were you hearing from friends?
I mean, I was never necessarily a huge fan of his. His COVID response was comforting at times. Like you said, especially in contrast to Trump in the true thick of things. Because, everyone knows New York City was really bad when it was at the height of the pandemic. And I mean, still our numbers are much better because we're pretty highly vaccinated at this point, but the Delta variant has come in and we're still seeing higher COVID numbers than anyone would like. But the controversy in and of itself, I don't think people were that surprised. And his excuse of, just being Italian and affectionate, like made people laugh though. And I like hearing it, amongst coworkers and friends, people think it's funny and they're just like, yeah, totally. I understand what he's saying. Like people almost didn't fault him for the harassment, which is a little dicey.
We as Democrats, obviously, Bill Clinton got something of a pass over the Monica Lewinsky affair. And I at the time defended Bill Clinton in this way. Well, this is private behavior. This isn't public behavior. This isn't, reflective of how he governs. Do you think we've changed as Democrats, as the left? I mean, I was always a white dude, so I kind of have my own privilege over here and I always have my own, sort of silo, if you will. Mm-hmm. But is society changing? Are we as Democrats no longer giving passes? Because Al Franken, we moved him out pretty quick. And Cuomo, he moved out quick. But a guy like Trump, he always gets a pass.
Right, because he doesn't necessarily have to answer to us. Well, I do think, the Democratic Party, things have definitely shifted drastically since Clinton's presidency. Attitudes and public values. People want people held responsible for their actions, like no matter when they happened. They were just acknowledging, like, this is how we feel about certain things now. And even if you did them in the past, like, we're going to hold you accountable for what you did.
Sharron, what about Joe Biden? How do you think the new guy's doing?
I like calling him the new guy. This is the oldest new guy I've ever.
Yeah. He's new like a comfortable old pair of slippers you found in the back of the closet. They're like new again.
I think his COVID response is decent. We're forward trending. I still think that he's bumbling just a little bit here and there, but my heart is not filled with hatred for the man or his policies as of yet.
Do you realize that Joe Biden, his approval ratings, I believe Quinnipiac, the latest to do polling, he's under 40%. And often Trump hovered around the low 40s. I mean, Joe Biden currently has lower approval ratings than Trump did at a similar point in his presidency. How troubling is that?
It's very troubling, but I think the man doesn't necessarily make people feel strongly about him in either direction. He's not polarizing almost to his own detriment.
Well, he certainly has the support of Democrats talking about Joe Biden and has the opposition of Republicans, but issues like Afghanistan have seemingly bled the support of independents. And they're the only ones that seemingly decide elections. Turn out your base and try to win over a higher percentage of the independents. And Sharron, we're in a perpetual election cycle. I mean, here in the state of Wisconsin, we're already worried about 2022. We got Ron Johnson on the ballot. We've got a Democratic governor who's the only fail-safe to bad Republican governance on the ballot. Do you think we've got Donald Trump on the ballot next year?
I think he may find a way. If no one is capable of indicting him and getting him behind bars, I feel like he's going to use every opportunity to attempt to run.
And if he runs, do you think he sincerely thinks he can win again? Do you think this is positioning, because if he doesn't win, it must be another rigged election, which, could foment more violence should Trump run and lose. But is it just a big grift? What do you think motivates Trump at this late hour? Get out of jail free card? What do you think it is?
Well, that's what I thought him running for re-election was, literally just a get out of jail free card. Because I don't think he necessarily wanted to actually run the country for another 4 years, because him running in the first place just felt like a big ego boost. And then I think he got addicted to the power and the attention, because that's what he thrives on more than most. And I mean, he certainly got it. And I think he's just in his soul, just literally a troll. He's a troll that likes to poke and to rile others up. And what better platform than to do it daily, just literally daily, addressing the nation, whether you do it on Twitter or whether you do it in a press conference. And he probably misses it. So I think he would do it. I don't know if I would say in earnest, but he does like to rile up the masses. So he might just be trying to incite more violence. Like, oh, you don't want me? Burn it down.
Is it feasible, to your perception, Sharron Paul, had Trump just been a little better on the Delta, I guess it was pre-Delta variant, but had he been a little better on the pandemic, had he worn a mask in public once in a blue moon, or made even the most modest acknowledgments of science and vaccinations while he was the president, I think he could have been reelected. I mean, as scary as his governance was, it was still pretty close. It's only like 90,000 votes between Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. I mean, the guy could have eyed the needle again.
I don't think you're wrong there. I do think had he taken even the slightest bit of responsibility and had acted in a way that was COVID safe in any respect, the numbers might have fallen into his favor.
Sharron, you mentioned Cuomo, barely regarded now in New York State, and he was all the rage not so long ago. Now I'm going to go to Des Moines, Iowa this Saturday. I'm going to a Trump rally. First one I've been to in a couple of years, since I think 2018 midterms.
And how was that experience for you?
Well, Trump rallies are always something of an experience. It's like going to a WWE match. The music's too loud. The crowd's a little too drunk. You wouldn't want to hang out with any of them outside of the event. But I always find it informative. I always like to talk to the crowd far more than, whatever it is that Trump's going to pontificate from the stage. I'm not going for the show. I'm going for the audience. And I want to get this perception of where it is that they stand. Because I see polling out of Iowa, the Des Moines Register, which is the gold standard there. Trump has never polled better in the state of Iowa. He's polling better now than when he was the president. His approval ratings are like 53% in Iowa.
What is going on in Iowa?
And amongst Republicans, both he and Governor Kim Reynolds have approval ratings 90%. So it's almost as if, as the Des Moines Register described it this week, his absence has made the heart grow fonder.
I was going to say.
Is that feasible? People forget just how bad it was. Some Republicans that hated his mean tweets, well, he's off Twitter, so now they forget.
They're not even reviewing them, so they can't just go back and scroll and see all the vitriol. But you know what I mean? Sadly, it shouldn't surprise me. Like our attention spans are short, and just our memories kind of blur things, and our sense of reality gets a little twisted. Because I mean, look at the cuddly, family-friendly painter that George W. Bush is these days. He's just, he's the cute, harmless old man who shares candy with his pal Michelle Obama.
Yeah, the war criminal thing's kind of been pushed to the background in the case of W. But obviously, Trump is still front and center. Folks, you are listening to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Got the finest of co-devils for the hour, and you can join us on the phone. She's Sharron Paul. Your phone number to call is 844-967-2789. Sharron, I'm really worried about this nation. I have thought these Republicans are willing to sell their souls for fascism, for the cult leader. But it's beyond Donald Trump, because Donald Trump, like active engagement with social media pages, stories about Donald Trump, that is way down on a national level. The fact that he's off Twitter, off Facebook, means that less people engage with him, and there are less stories being written about him. And the stories that are being written about him, less people view them, less people read them. And I think we on the left, I think there is this notion that, he's finally fading away. He's finally going away.
He's fading for us, but the people who want to hear from him are going to hear from him. They're going to show up in person. If the man is holding rallies, all you need is an email blast to get the info you need. And the people have their message boards. I'm like, if people want to talk about him on Reddit or any of the Chan boards or anything, they can do it. They will always have the space to do so and the networks to do so. They may not be on the large platforms that we're all on, but any niche community is going to do what they need to do to carry on.
Well, and Sharron, you don't have to like his Facebook post, because you can run a Trump flag up the flagpole. I don't know how many, and I often go out to rural Wisconsin, and I'm planning on driving through rural Iowa, at least for a period of time on Saturday. And I'm going to be looking for the Trump signs, the Trump flags, and they haven't put them away, Sharron. A, they still believe the guy won, or B, they're so hopeful. They're so engaged with this guy. They're so believing in this guy. They've already aspired for his 2024 candidacy. I don't think they need Facebook to show their support for the man. They run it up the flagpole in the front yard.
And they still have their MAGA hats and everything. I mean, I feel lucky, but maybe a little disillusioned just because I live in New York City. So I don't see that too often. It is quite the rarity to see something as loud and obnoxious as a Trump flag. And then when I do see something as maybe more likely to see something like a bumper sticker, it's still very jarring, where it's just like, oh, whoa, where did you come from? Why do you live here of all places, if that's how you feel?
Well, it was funny. I went to New York in 2016, and it was during the primaries, and we were chasing Bernie Sanders in Washington Park, that enormous rally he had. But some of the drivers, and I did see Trump bumper stickers, and we talked to some of the airport drivers, and they were supportive of Trump. And I didn't quite understand it. It was a strange contrast to me, Sharron. We would hear about Trump, and we would hear about Clinton. It wasn't Hillary. It was the name brand Clinton. They knew Clinton in New York, and obviously Hillary won the primary. But Donald Trump, is a New Yorker. And I think, people from New York tell me, we know Donald Trump. We know Donald Trump. They would never elect Donald Trump. He didn't win the state of New York. It wasn't close.
Right.
They know the true Donald Trump. They've been watching his shenanigans
since the
20,
80s,
30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Come back with us. One last segment. You could be a part of this big show. That's Sharron Paul. She's my fine co-devil for the afternoon. The phone number, the only one you need, 844-967-2789. That's 844-96-PARTY. Sharron and I will be right back.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
Hi, this is Brad from Zero Res. If you need someone to help with your carpet cleaning, business or residence, please give us a call. We have the best system available and an amazing team of friendly technicians. Call us at 848-9000 or schedule online at zeroresmadison.com.
Hey, I'm here from Knuckleheads. Have you seen our new location yet? Come on down to 520 State Street for all your CBD needs. We have a huge selection of gummies, oils, and a variety of other CBD products. We also have a gigantic walk-in humidor. The knowledgeable staff at Knuckleheads will work with you to find exactly what you need. Mention Devil Radio at checkout to get 15% off your next order. Knuckleheads, now at 520 State Street. We'll see you there.
Hey, this is Rocker, and I'm back on the patio at Salvatore's Tomato Pies on East Wash. I'm having a brand new cocktail you just have to try. It's called Divide and Concord. It features Rocker vodka along with Concord grape, thyme, St. Elizabeth's dram, and a touch of lemon lime. Ask for it by name, Divide and Concord, at Salvatore's Tomato Pies. Find Rocker vodka and Rocker rye whiskey at Vic Pierce on Sherman Avenue. Please drink responsibly.
At Crazy Lenny's E-Bikes, my store, we have solid e-bikes with 4 power levels, 7 speeds for just $844, or we have the best-selling e-bike designed for Madison bike trails, 5 power settings with throttle or center drive, 35-mile range, complete comfort, spring-loaded seats, soft front adjustable shocks, a $2,000 e-bike, $600 off, just $1,400.
The largest selection in North America, 200 e-bikes on display. I've seen them
at Crazy Lenny's E-Bikes.
Greetings, everyone. This is Nate Tim inviting you to my show, Lay of the Land, about life and politics in rural Wisconsin. Join me every Thursday at 7 p.m. Join me this week for my special guest, Janet Bewley. See you then.
In time, you will know the true power of Devil Radio 92.7. It is your destiny.
The Devil's Advocates. Rock and roll political commentary in a top 40 world.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Last segment of the day. I got to find Code Devil for the hour. She's comedian Sharron Paul, zooming in from New York. Sharron, I appreciate you joining me here on the show today. We're going to get to the phones as well. 844-967-2789. Sharron, let me ask you quickly, though. Democrats have to deliver for the American people. Joe Biden was elected for a reason, and it was to deliver the will of the American people. And I never thought it would be a couple of obstructionist Dems in Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema that would wreck the plan. Sharron, if people don't see delivery from the Dems, are you worried that they're going to stay home and perhaps Trump 2.0 could be a feasibility?
I think it's possible. I think a lot of, relatively younger people in the GOP have seen his example and know that they can get as extreme as they want and they can rile up a following, and people end up being apathetic. And if they don't feel strongly for their party, they are going to sit at home. So it's just, if one side is riled up while the other ones are disillusioned at home, that leaves the room for, the other side to fully take over.
Sharron, what about Facebook? We saw the whistleblower give testimony earlier this week, accused Facebook of destructive behavior, basically for a profit motive. How destructive do you think Facebook is? How much do you think they help perpetrate the big lie, help foment violence like we saw on January 6th? Is Facebook, should it be broken up? What do you think we should do with Facebook?
I honestly don't know what the next steps should be with Facebook, but I do definitely see how dangerous and divisive it can be and how much, fake news pops up all the time. And it is frightening to me. And I see also that their rulings are biased, because honestly, I'm in a lot of Facebook groups personally, a lot of Black leaning groups, and people get, zucked all the time. Like I have a cousin who is like an outspoken pro-Black individual who had his account deleted permanently. I know people end up in Facebook jail all the time for sharing certain news stories or for sharing opinions that go against the supposed community guidelines, where no one can actually see what the actual problem was. Sometimes even in women's groups, if you use the word men and you use it in a sentence that has other negative words in it, you're getting banned. So the rules at Facebook are a little wonky. The values are very wonky. And I mean, at the end of the day, I suppose it's a business, and they're doing what gets the numbers, what gets the ad revenue, what gets the engagement, and nothing gets people more engaged than being angry and debating something and seeing something sensational.
Let me ask you, even very recently, I've had conversations with Trump supporters, and they point towards the January 6th attack and say, well, that's no worse than what happened with the Black Lives Matter protest all across the country. Why are we prosecuting those people? Comes off to me as racially tinged. But what's your perception when you hear this? And I was at some of the Black Lives Matter protests locally that were peaceful events. And then later, primarily white agitators went and started looting. And, of course, cast a pale on the whole event. But when we hear, and it's all white guys saying this, Sharron, but when you hear a white guy saying, well, it's no worse than the Black Lives Matter protest, what would you say in response?
First thing is, like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Very much a false equivalency. This riot was January 6th. The riot with those domestic terrorists were literally an attack on the American government that they so claim to love and want to fight for its freedom. I don't know why they became destructive about it. And with the Black Lives Matter protests, that was a matter of showing solidarity and, exclaiming that we have a right to live, we have a right to exist, we are not disposable, like there's humanity to us and our lives. And it's like the people on January 6th are the so-called All Lives Matter crowd. And to them, it felt like no one's lives mattered in that moment. It was just a very dangerous and reckless situation.
Certainly they seemingly forgot their affinity for Blue Lives Matter on January 6th.
Oh yeah, none of the blue lives seemed to matter that day, which is fascinating. It was a different pivot. Like they have the range, I guess. There was some dissonance going on in that moment. But like you said, also,
I don't mean to cut you short, but I got a couple callers that want to have a conversation with you before we run out of time. Sorry to be rude. Susie from Lodi, be nice for me. Say hi to Sharron.
Hi, Sharron.
Hi, how are you?
How you doing? Where in New York are you?
I'm currently in Lower Manhattan.
Okay. Well, welcome to Wisconsin, however you're visiting us. But as Trudy knows, all I got to do is drive a half a mile out of town, not even, and I've got a Trump 2024 sign on 100-year-old farm and flags, and he doesn't need Manhattan. He needs Wisconsin and all of his minions. So, yeah, I really think that you underestimate the level of violence that.
Well, I'm going to cut you short, Susie. I don't know, Sharron, that you underestimate the level of pro-Trump and sort of anti-democracy sentiment out there in the country. Just
I don't know.
New York doesn't mean you don't get it.
Right. I don't physically see it here in New York City, but I know that it is very real. I very much acknowledge that and realize it, but it's not what I personally see locally. I know that it's real. Trust.
Tyler, you got 30 seconds with my fine guest, Sharron Paul. Say hi.
Hi, how's it going? I'm Tyler from Madison. My question is, when we're talking about Republicans and how they're mishmashing the voting restrictions and everything, how likely do we think that they are willing to actually overturn elections of duly elected representatives in there?
Do you think they'd carry through with the plan? Do you think they'd carry out a civil war or a secession? How bad do you think it could be, Sharron?
I don't think it's outside the realm of reality. Even if it didn't actually come to secession or an actual all-out civil war, I feel like they want to get those gears turning and make the attempts.
Sharron Paul, thank you so much for being my co-devil for the day. She's a fine comedian. Find her on the social mediums. Thank you to James Santelle, former U.S. attorney. Now stick around. The Earl Ingram Show is next. Keep her locked. Devil Radio 92.7.
If it's possible, would you let me know, am I under investigation?
9 times.
It's Enrico Palazzo!
Hi, I'm a pleasant voice reminding you to enable Devil Radio